General Robert Caldwell did not simply disagree with her. He laughed, out loud, in front of 40 officers. "You analyze screens, Captain. I command soldiers. Sit down before you embarrass yourself." And the room laughed with him. Every man in it. Emily Carter stood there with her hands shaking, holding a folder that proved every officer laughing at her was about to send 11 Americans into an ambush that was already waiting for them. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and stay with this story all the way to the end. And comment the city you are watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The briefing began at 0600 and by 0612, Captain Emily Carter already knew that 11 men were going to die. She knew it the way a doctor knows a scan is wrong before he says a word. She knew it in her stomach first, and then in her hands, and then in the cold little space behind her eyes where she kept every fact she had ever memorized. She sat in the third row of the operations room at Fort Liberty with a coffee she had not touched, and she listened to General Robert Caldwell walk 40 officers through a plan that was going to get people killed. He was magnificent about it. That was the worst part. Caldwell had 35 years in uniform, 4 stars on his shoulder, and a voice that made men sit up straighter without meaning to. He did not use notes. He never had. He stood at the front of that room with a laser pointer in one hand and a coffee cup in the other, and he talked about Operation Silent Horizon, the way a man talks about a house he built himself. 11 Americans, he said, 11 contractors and 2 embassy security personnel held approximately 41 hours as of this morning. They are alive. We know they are alive, and they are going to stay alive because we are going in Thursday night and we are bringing them home. Somebody in the second row said, "Yes, sir," under his breath, and half the room made a low sound of agreement, and Emily felt her jaw tighten. "Insertion here," Caldwell said, and the red dot moved across the map. 2 birds staggered by 90 seconds. "Ground element, it moves west along this wadi. It is the only approach with terrain cover on both flanks. Extraction back along the same corridor out through this pass, wheels up in under 19 minutes. Clean, quiet, home." Emily looked at the pass on the screen and felt something crawl up the back of her neck. She had been looking at that pass for 3 days. She had been looking at it since Sunday night when she should have been asleep when a satellite pass came in at 0230 and she pulled it up out of habit and then sat there for 6 straight hours without moving. Caldwell was still talking. Colonel Mercer walked them through the timeline. Colonel Grant Mercer stood up. Mercer was 51 heavy in the shoulders, and he had a way of speaking to junior officers that made them feel like furniture. He clicked to the next slide, and Emily's chest went tight because there it was again. The same route, the same pass, the same beautiful, deadly, perfectly logical corridor that somebody on the other side of the world had been quietly preparing for 11 days. She looked down at the folder in her lap. Her hands were sweating on it. She had rehearsed this in her car. She had rehearsed it in the shower. She had rehearsed it standing in her own kitchen at 4 in the morning, saying the words out loud to nobody. And every single time she rehearsed it, she sounded calm and credible and sure. And now that she was sitting here in a room full of men with more medals than she had years of service, her mouth had gone completely dry. "Say it now," she told herself. "Say it before he finishes. Because once he finishes, it becomes his plan in front of witnesses, and no man defends a plan harder than a man who just presented it." Mercer was on the last slide. "Questions," Caldwell said. Nobody moved, and Emily Carter stood up. The sound of her chair on that floor was the loudest thing she had ever heard in her life. "Sir," she said, "Captain Carter J2 analysis. I have a concern with the extraction corridor." Caldwell looked at her the way a man looks at a phone ringing during dinner. Polite, patient, already done with the conversation. "Go ahead, Captain." "Sir, the enemy is not randomly positioned along that route. They are staged along it." Somebody laughed. Not a big laugh. A short, ugly little breath of a laugh from the back of the room, and it went through her like a needle. "Staged," Caldwell repeated. "Yes, sir." "Based on what?" "Based on 11 days of movement, sir. I have imagery from 4 separate passes. Vehicle placement along the northern ridge changed on the 12th. It changed again on the 14th. Both times the movement was lateral, not transitory. They are not passing through that terrain, sir. They are settling into it." "Captain," Mercer did not even stand up to say it, "every fighter in that province settles into terrain. That is what they do. They live there." "Sir, with respect, They do not dig in on the reverse slope of a ridge that overlooks nothing they own. That got the room's attention for exactly 2 seconds. Then Mercer said, overlooks nothing they own yet. And there was another laugh, bigger this time, and Emily felt the heat climb up her throat and into her face, and she hated her own body for it. Caldwell raised one hand and the room went quiet. Captain Carter, he said, how long have you been in the Army? She knew what this was. She had watched him do it to other people. It was not a question. It was a doorway he was building so he could walk her out of it. 10 years, sir. 10 years, any of it downrange. 2 deployments, sir, both in analysis. In analysis, Caldwell said. In a building. Yes, sir. So you have never actually walked a wadi at night? The room was so quiet she could hear the air handler. No, sir, Emily said. I have not. I have, Caldwell said. 47 times. I have walked corridors exactly like that one with men on either side of me, and I can tell you something that does not show up on your imagery, Captain. The enemy is not a chess player. He is a scared man with a rifle who moves where his cousin tells him to move. You are looking at 11 days of pickup trucks, and you are building me a conspiracy. Sir, I am not building anything. I am reporting a pattern. You are reporting a feeling. I am reporting 640 hours of imagery review, sir. Something flickered across Caldwell's face then. Just for a second. Surprise, maybe. Or irritation at being answered. And that flicker made Mercer stand all the way up. Captain, do you understand what you are doing right now? Mercer said. There are 11 Americans in a basement. Every hour we sit here debating, your feeling is an hour they are in that basement. Do you want to be the reason we go Friday instead of Thursday? And that was the knife. Because it worked. She watched it work. She watched 30 faces in that room shift from bored to hostile in the space of one sentence because he had just told them she was the delay, and nothing turns a room against a person faster than the suggestion that they are costing somebody time. Sir, Emily said, and her voice cracked on the word, and she hated that too. I want them home Thursday. I want them home tonight. What I do not want is to send a rescue force into a corridor the enemy has already zeroed. You do not want, Mercer said. Captain, nobody in this room is particularly interested in what you want. Somebody snorted, and that was when General Robert Caldwell said the sentence that Emily Carter would hear in her head for the rest of her career. He set his coffee down. He looked at her almost kindly the way you look at a child who has interrupted adults. You analyze screens, Captain, he said. I command soldiers. And he laughed. Not a cruel laugh. That was somehow worse. It was a warm, easy, comfortable laugh, the laugh of a man who has already won, and the entire room laughed with him, because that is what rooms do when the man with 4 stars decides something is funny. Emily stood there in the middle of that sound. She could feel her pulse in her fingertips. She could feel 40 pairs of eyes deciding who she was. She could feel 10 years of work getting filed right there in real time under the heading of that little captain who wasted everybody's morning. And she thought very clearly one word. Fine. Sit down, Captain, Caldwell said, still smiling. You did your job. You raised the concern. It is noted. She did not sit down. The laughter thinned out. Captain, Mercer said, the general told you to sit. Sir, Emily said, may I approach the table? No, Mercer said. General, Emily said, and she said it directly to Caldwell, past Mercer entirely, and the room made a sound like a held breath. You have known me for 11 months. In 11 months, I have never once brought you something I could not prove. I'm asking for 90 seconds. Caldwell looked at her for a long moment. Later, much later, he would tell his wife that he did not know why he said yes. He would say it kept him up. He would say that he had told 100 junior officers to sit down over 35 years and never once wondered about a single one of them, and that this was the only time in his life he had looked at somebody and thought, she is not afraid of me, and she should be so. Why is she not? 90 seconds, he said. Mercer said, sir. 90 seconds, Grant. Emily walked to the front of that room with her legs shaking so badly, she was certain everybody could see it. 23 steps. She counted them. She put the folder on the table in front of General Caldwell, and she did not open it because she had learned a long time ago that when you hand a proud man a folder, you let him open it himself. Sir, that is a classified compilation. It is stamped. Ortiz and I pulled it Sunday through Wednesday. Caldwell put one hand flat on the cover. And what am I looking at, Captain? You are looking at the reason I stood up. He opened it. The first page was a satellite image dated the 12th with 4 vehicles circled in red. He turned it over. The second page was the same terrain dated the 14th, and the 4 vehicles had become 9, and they had moved onto the reverse slope, and every one of them was oriented the same direction. He turned it over. Emily kept talking quietly, evenly, because she had 90 seconds and she was not going to waste them on being upset. Sir, page 4 is a thermal overlay. Note the 6 heat signatures along the eastern lip of the pass present at 0300 absent, at 1100 present, again at 0300 the following night. That is a shift rotation. Fighters do not run shift rotations on empty ground. They run shift rotations on positions they intend to hold, Mercer said. Or they are sleeping in the shade like human beings, Captain. On a reverse slope with no water and no road access, sir. Mercer opened his mouth. He closed it. Caldwell turned another page. Sir, page 6 is a mortar base plate. Not a truck, a base plate. Somebody dug in a mortar position and then covered it, and they covered it badly, and the shadow gives it away at 1640 local. That position ranges the exact center of the extraction corridor. Something in the room changed. It was small. It was the sound of 30 people who had been slouching, quietly sitting up half an inch. It was Major Dennis Hobbs, 3 chairs down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. It was one of Mercer's own staff officers whispering something to the man beside him and getting no answer. Caldwell had not said a word in 40 seconds. He turned to page 7 and he stopped. Emily watched his eyes move across the page. She watched them go to the top right corner where the date stamp was. She watched them come back to the center of the page. She watched them go to the top right corner again. And she watched a 4-star general's face change color. Captain, Caldwell said. His voice had gone completely flat. What is the date on this image? The 11th, sir. The 11th? Yes, sir. And what is the date the corridor was selected? The 17th, sir. Nobody in that room moved. Say that again, Captain. The corridor was selected on the 17th, sir. Planning cell locked it at 1420 on the 17th. I have the timestamp on the approval memo. It is page 8. Caldwell turned to page 8. The silence in that operations room was the strangest thing Emily had ever experienced. It had weight. It pressed on her ears. 40 grown men and women, most of them senior to her, all of them absolutely still, while a man in his 60s stared at 2 pieces of paper and did arithmetic that a child could do. The enemy had begun preparing the corridor 6 days before the American military chose it. That is not possible, Mercer said. No, sir, Emily said. It is not. Then your dates are wrong. Sir, the imagery date stamp is generated at the collection platform. I cannot alter it. Neither can you. Page 9 is the raw metadata pull with the collection identifier. If the general wants, we can request the original from the agency directly and compare. You are accusing somebody in this command of, Mercer said, and then he stopped because he could not finish the sentence out loud, and everybody in that room heard him not finish it. Emily said nothing. She had learned that too. When a room is doing the work for you, get out of the way. Caldwell closed the folder. He sat back in his chair. He looked at the map on the screen, at the pretty red line running through the pass, at the plan he had built and defended, and put his name on 11 minutes ago. Then he looked up at Emily Carter with an expression she could not read at all. Captain, he said, how many people have seen this folder? 3, sir. Myself. Sergeant First Class Ortiz, who pulled the raw imagery. And you. Not your section chief? No, sir. Why not? And Emily hesitated. It was the only time she hesitated in the entire meeting, and Caldwell saw it, and she knew he saw it. Captain. Because my section chief was in the room on the 17th, sir, she said. And until I know how that route got out, I do not know who was. The sound that went through that room then was not a gasp. It was uglier than a gasp. It was 30 people all realizing at the same instant that the person sitting next to them might be somebody they did not know. Mercer came out of his chair. That is an outrageous thing to say in an open briefing. Sir, I did not want to say it in an open briefing. I asked to approach the table. You have just accused every officer in this room. No, sir, I have accused a route of leaking. The route does not care about our feelings. Somebody at the back of the room laughed, a real laugh this time. A short, shocked, delighted bark of a laugh, and Mercer's head snapped around to find it, and he did not. General, Mercer said, with respect, this is exactly the kind of hysteria that gets missions canceled and hostages killed. A date stamp is a date stamp. Systems corrupt files. Analysts misread shadows. I have seen a captain call a septic tank a bunker. I have seen that too, Caldwell said. Emily's stomach dropped. But I have never, Caldwell said, seen a septic tank move 9 vehicles onto a reverse slope 6 days early. Mercer's mouth closed with an audible click. Caldwell stood up. When a 4-star general stands up in a room, everybody stands up. Chairs went back all across that floor in a ragged wave. Silent Horizon is suspended, he said. Sir, Mercer said. Suspended Colonel. Sir, the birds are staged. The team is staged. We have a window, and the window closes in 51 hours. Then we will find another window. Sir, those men are in a basement. And General Robert Caldwell turned on Colonel Grant Mercer with a look that made 3 separate people in that room decide never to be on the other end of it. I am aware of where they are, Grant, he said very quietly. I have been aware of where they are since Tuesday morning at 0410 when I got the call. I have not slept more than 4 hours since. Do not stand in my operations room and tell me about those men like I have forgotten them. Mercer said nothing. 11 Americans in a basement is a tragedy, Caldwell said. 11 Americans in a basement plus 26 of my soldiers in a kill zone is a catastrophe, and it is a catastrophe I will have signed my name to. Now sit down. Mercer sat down. Caldwell turned to the room. Nobody in this room discusses this briefing. Not with your staff, not with your spouse, not with your best friend from West Point. If I hear one syllable of this outside these walls, I will personally end the career of whoever said it, and I will enjoy doing it. Hobbs. Sir, get me the planning cell roster for the 17th. Everybody, including the kid who brought the coffee. Yes, sir. Mercer. Sir, you and I are going to have a conversation later. Yes, sir. Dismissed. Captain Carter, you stay. The room emptied in 90 seconds. Emily stood at the front of it while 37 people filed past her, and she watched their faces, and she would remember those faces for a long time. Some of them would not look at her. Some of them looked at her with something like fear. Major Hobbs caught her eye on the way out and gave her a single small nod, the smallest gesture of respect she had ever received, and it nearly took her legs out from under her. And Colonel Grant Mercer stopped beside her on his way to the door. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. You should have brought that to me privately, he said. Sandy tried. Twice. Monday afternoon and Tuesday morning. Mercer looked at her for a second. Then he said, You have no idea what you just started. And he walked out. And Emily Carter stood there with her heart hammering, thinking, No, sir, I do not. But you do. Then the door closed, and it was just her and the general. Caldwell did not look up. He was going through the folder again backward this time, page 9 to page 1 slowly, the way a man checks a thing he desperately wants to be wrong about. Sit down, Captain. She sat. You want coffee? No, sir. Take the coffee. He poured it himself. That detail would stay with her, too. A 4-star general with 35 years in uniform, pouring coffee for a captain because he needed 20 seconds to think and did not want her watching his face while he did it. How old are you? He said. 32, sir. 32. He shook his head slowly. I have a granddaughter who is 19. She thinks I do not listen to her either. Emily did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. I embarrassed you in front of 40 officers, Caldwell said. Yes, sir, you did. He looked up sharply, and then unexpectedly the corner of his mouth moved. You are not going to make this comfortable for me, are you? No, sir. I do not think I should. No, Caldwell said. I do not think you should either. He tapped page 7 with 2 fingers. Walk me through it again. Not the imagery. The other thing, the thing you did not want to say in front of the room. Emily set the coffee down. Sir, there are only 4 ways the enemy gets that corridor before we choose it. One coincidence. I have run it. The corridor is one of 19 viable approaches. The odds of them fortifying that specific one on that specific timeline are somewhere around 1 in 400. Not impossible. Just not something I would bet 26 soldiers on. Agreed. 2. They anticipated us. They know our doctrine. They know we love terrain cover on both flanks, and they guessed. That one worries me more because it is plausible. But if they guessed, they would have hedged. They would have put something in the other two likely corridors. They did not. They put everything in one. Sir, nobody bets their whole force on a guess. Caldwell was very still now. 3. 3, we have a technical compromise. Somebody is in our planning system. That is the answer I hope for, sir, because it is the least painful one. And 4, Emily looked at him. 4, sir, is that somebody who sat in that planning cell on the 17th told somebody outside this building. And I want to be very clear with the general. I am not accusing anybody. I do not have a name. I have a date and a piece of ground, and the two of them do not fit together, and somebody in this command is the reason why. Caldwell put his hand over his eyes for a moment. Do you understand what happens now, he said. Sir, to you, do you understand what happens to you now? I imagine it will be uncomfortable, sir. And Caldwell laughed, not the way he had laughed in the briefing. This laugh had nothing in it at all. Uncomfortable, he said. Captain, I have been doing this since before you were born, and I am going to tell you something, and I want you to actually hear it. 10 minutes ago, you were an analyst nobody thought about. As of right now, you are a threat to somebody. And people who are threats get handled. Not shot, not arrested, handled. Somebody is going to pull your file. Somebody is going to find the worst thing in it, and everybody has a worst thing, and they are going to put that thing in front of exactly the right people at exactly the right time, and they are going to do it so smoothly that the people who repeat it will believe they thought of it themselves. Emily's throat closed. Sir, I am not trying to frighten you. You are doing an excellent job anyway, sir. Good, Caldwell said. Be frightened. Frightened people check their work. He closed the folder and pushed it back across the table to her. 2 things, Captain. First, that folder does not leave your hands. Not to my aide, not to Mercer's shop, not to your section chief. If I want it, I will ask you for it in person, and you will hand it to me in person. Understood? Yes, sir. Second, he looked at her. You were right and I was wrong, and I said something to you in front of 40 officers that I should not have said. I am not going to apologize for it here in an empty room where it costs me nothing. Emily blinked. Sir, when I apologize to you, Captain, it will be in a room with people in it, Caldwell said. That is how the debt gets paid. Anything else is me making myself feel better. And that was the moment. Not the folder, not the date stamp, not the suspension. That was the moment Emily Carter understood that the man who had humiliated her 40 minutes earlier was going to be the most important ally she would ever have, and that she had almost thrown him away because he had hurt her feelings. Yes, sir, she said. Go home, sleep. You look terrible. Sir, I have 4 more collection windows to review. Captain, sir, if they moved once, they will move again, and when they move again, they will tell me whether they know we canceled. Caldwell stopped with his hand on the door. He turned around slowly. Say that again. Sir, if the enemy is being fed our planning, then the moment they learn Silent Horizon is suspended, they will reposition. There is no reason to hold 9 vehicles on a reverse slope for a mission that is not coming, so they will move. And the speed at which they move tells us something. Tells us what? Tells us how fast our information reaches them, sir, Emily said. If they break in 72 hours, it went through 3 or 4 hands. If they break tonight. She did not finish it. She did not need to. General Robert Caldwell stood at that door for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was very quiet. If they break tonight, then whoever it is was in that room this morning. Yes, sir. There were 37 people in that room, Captain. 38, sir, including me. Caldwell looked at her. You are counting yourself. Sir, if I am asking you to suspect people, I do not get to be the exception. And something happened to the old man's face that Emily had never seen before and would only see twice more in her life. It softened. Completely. Ortiz, he said, your sergeant. He is good. He is the best I have ever worked with, sir. Then you and Ortiz watch that ridge tonight. Nobody else. You report to me and only to me. Not through the section. Not through the duty desk. You call my personal line, and if I do not answer, you keep calling. Yes, sir. And Captain, he opened the door. The kid on the planning cell roster. the one who brought the coffee. Sir, Hobbs is going to bring me that roster in about an hour. When he does, I want you to look at it before I do. Why me, sir? Because you are the only person in this building I am currently certain about, Caldwell said, and that is a terrible thing for a general to have to say out loud. He left. Emily Carter sat alone in the operations room at Fort Liberty with a cold cup of coffee and a folder in her lap, and her hands finally started shaking the way they had wanted to shake for the last 40 minutes. She let them. Then she stopped them. Then she stood up and she picked up the folder and she walked out into a hallway where two majors stopped talking the second they saw her. She smiled at them. Neither one smiled back. By the time she reached her section, 3 people had already asked her what happened in the briefing, and she had told all 3 of them nothing, and she watched something die in their faces each time. By 0930, the rumor going around the building was that a captain in J2 had called a 4-star general a liar in front of the entire command staff. By 1100, the rumor was that she had done it to get herself noticed. By 1400, somebody in the gym had said the word unstable, and it had traveled the length of Fort Liberty in under an hour, the way that word always does. Emily heard about it at 1600 from Sergeant First Class Miguel Ortiz, who came into her office, closed the door, and said, "Ma'am, whatever you did this morning, you need to know what they are saying about you." "I know what they are saying." "No, ma'am, I do not think you do." Ortiz set his phone down on her desk, face up. Somebody is not just talking, somebody is organizing. Emily looked at the screen, and she went very cold, because it was not a rumor, it was a document. Her document, her file, 14 pages of it, the sealed part, the part that 3 people in the United States Army were supposed to have access to, sitting in a group chat that Ortiz had been added to by mistake at 1447 that afternoon. Somebody had pulled her record 11 hours after she stood up in that briefing. 11 hours. "Ma'am," Ortiz said, "who did you make angry?" And Emily Carter looked at that screen and thought about a colonel stopping beside her chair and telling her she had no idea what she just started, and she said the only honest thing she could say, "I do not know yet, Miguel, but he is fast, and he is not in this building." At 1612, Emily Carter read her own sealed file on a sergeant's phone in a room with the door closed, and she found out exactly how little of her life belonged to her. 14 pages. She scrolled with her thumb, and she did not blink. "Ma'am," Ortiz said, "you do not have to read it." "Yes, I do, ma'am." "Miguel, I have to know which version they have." He stopped talking after that because he understood what she meant, and he did not like it. There were 2 versions of Emily Carter's file. There was the version that lived in the system, the one with the redactions, the black boxes over the psych evaluation, and the inspector general complaint she had filed 9 years ago against a major who had falsified a battle damage assessment and gotten a Bronze Star for it. And then there was the other version, the clean one, the one that existed in exactly 3 places in the United States Army and required a general officer's signature to release. She got to page 6. There were no black boxes. "Oh," she said, "Ma'am, Miguel, this is not a hack." She set the phone down very carefully, like it might go off. "Nobody stole this. Somebody requested it through the front door with authority." Ortiz went still. "That is not possible in 11 hours. "It is if you are somebody." "Ma'am, who has that kind of somebody?" And Emily heard very clearly a voice from that morning saying, "You have no idea what you just started." "Get your notebook," she said. "The paper one, not the phone." "Ma'am, Miguel, from right now, nothing about this goes on a screen. Nothing. Not email, not chat, not a note in your phone. If it is electric, assume he is reading it." Ortiz did not ask who he was. He just took out the little green notebook he had carried since 2011, and he clicked his pen and he said, "Ready, ma'am?" At 1631, she called General Caldwell's personal line, and he picked up on the second ring, which told her he had been holding the phone. "Carter. Sir, my file was released this afternoon, the unredacted copy. It is currently circulating in a group chat with at least 11 people in it." There was a pause on the other end that lasted long enough for Emily to hear the man breathing. "Say the time," Caldwell said. "Ortiz was added at 1447, sir. And the briefing ended at 0740. "Yes, sir." 7 hours. Caldwell's voice had gone somewhere flat and dangerous. 7 hours to pull a sealed file on a captain nobody had heard of yesterday. "Get to my office. Bring the sergeant. Bring the notebook and nothing else. Sir, how did you know about the notebook? Because I would have told you to get a notebook, Caldwell said and hung up. At 17:10, they were in his office with the door shut and Major Dennis Hobbs standing at the corner of the desk holding a stack of paper he clearly wished he could put down and walk away from. Roster for the 17th, Hobbs said. 19 names, everybody who was inside that planning cell between 0900 and 1420, including 2 people who only stepped in to hand somebody a folder. Caldwell reached for it, and Emily said, "Sir." He stopped with his hand out. "General, you told me this morning you wanted me to look at it before you did." Hobbs looked at Caldwell. Caldwell looked at Emily, and then slowly the general pulled his hand back and folded it on the desk. "Give it to the Captain, Dennis." "Sir, she is a captain." "I am aware of her rank, Major. I made a joke about it this morning in front of 40 people. Give her the roster." Hobbs handed it over. Emily read it standing up. Nobody in the room said anything. It took her 4 minutes, and Hobbs shifted his weight twice, and Ortiz did not move at all. Then she said, 19 names, 15 of them do not matter." "Explain that," Caldwell said. "Sir, 15 of these people were in the room for the discussion, but not for the selection. The corridor was locked at 1420. 9 of these names had already left the building by 1400. 4 more were on a video call with Tampa from 1350 to 1435, which is time-stamped and verifiable. 2 more never saw the final overlay. They were logistics. They were arguing about fuel. That leaves 4. That leaves 4, sir. You, Colonel Mercer, Lieutenant Colonel Ray Dunham from Operations, and a GS-9 planning assistant named Daniel Walker." Hobbs made a small noise. "Say it, Major," Caldwell said. "Sir Walker is 26 years old. He makes the slides. He is the one who fixes the printer." "So he was in the room?" "He was in the room because somebody has to carry the binders, sir." "Then he was in the room," Caldwell said. "Captain, what do you have on him?" "Nothing yet, sir, but I have something on somebody." She put the roster down on the desk and turned it around so it faced him, and she put one finger on the top of the page. "Sir, this roster was generated at 15:23 today. Look at the header." Caldwell looked. "It was pulled under a general officer's authorization code," Emily said. "So was my file, same code. Major Hobbs, can you read the last 4 digits out loud?" Hobbs read them, and General Robert Caldwell went absolutely white. "Sir," Hobbs said. Caldwell did not answer. He opened the top left drawer of his desk and took out a laminated card and set it down and turned it around, and Emily leaned over and read it, and her stomach dropped through the floor. "That is your code, sir," she said. "That is my code. General, where were you at 1447 this afternoon?" "In a vehicle on Long Street with my driver on the way back from the airfield, on a call with the Pentagon that I can produce records of in about 90 seconds. Caldwell put both hands flat on the desk. "I did not pull that file, Captain." "I know you did not, sir." "How do you know?" "Because if you had wanted to see my file, sir, you would have made me sit in a chair and read it to you out loud," Emily said. Ortiz coughed into his fist. Caldwell almost smiled. It did not reach anywhere near his eyes. "So somebody in my command," he said slowly, "used my authorization to attack an officer under my protection 11 hours after she embarrassed a colonel in my briefing room." "Yes, sir." "Hobbs." "Sir." "Who has physical access to that card?" Hobbs took a long breath. "Sir, that code is on file with the security manager, the deputy chief of staff, and it is on a standing authorization letter in 3 binders that live in the vault. Legally, sir, about 9 people can execute under it. Practically more." "How much more?" "Sir, honestly, anyone who has ever watched you sign something and knew where the binder was." "That is disgraceful." "Yes, sir, it is, and I have written 2 memos about it, and both of them died in staffing." "Who killed them?" "Sir," Hobbs said, and he looked at the wall. "Colonel Mercer's shop." And then somebody knocked on the door at 1743, and it was Colonel Grant Mercer. He came in without waiting. He looked at Emily. He looked at the sergeant standing behind her with a notebook. He looked at Hobbs, and whatever he had come in to say, he did not say it. "Sir," he said to Caldwell, "you wanted a conversation." "Sit down, Grant." "I would rather stand." "Sit down." Mercer sat. "Captain Carter's sealed file was released this afternoon under my authorization code," Caldwell said. "I did not authorize it. It is currently circulating in a group chat on this installation. I want to know what you know. Mercer's head came up fast. Sir, if you are asking me whether I pulled that officer's file, the answer is no. I'm asking you what you know. I know nothing about it. Then why? Caldwell said, did you stop beside her chair this morning and tell her she had no idea what she had started? The silence went on for 4 full seconds. Because she does not, Mercer said. Elaborate. Sir, with respect, I would like to do that in private. There is no private anymore, Grant. Somebody in this command is using my name like a library card. Elaborate. Mercer looked at Emily then, and his face did something complicated. Captain, he said, how long have you been at Liberty? 11 months, sir. 11 months. Do you know what happened to Major Sandra Voss? Emily felt her scalp prickle. No, sir. Of course you do not, because nobody says her name. Mercer turned back to Caldwell. Sir, 14 months ago, Major Voss in contracting flagged a sole source award she thought was dirty. 6 weeks later, she had a driving under the influence allegation that never made it to a court, a marriage that fell apart in public, and a transfer to a job in Alabama nobody has ever heard of. Nothing was proven. Nothing had to be. She is gone. You never brought that to me, Caldwell said. I brought it to the Deputy Chief of Staff, sir. I was told it was a personal matter and I should mind my own lane. Mercer's jaw worked. So this morning when this captain stood up in an open briefing and said the words somebody inside this command, I stopped beside her chair and I told her she had no idea what she had started because she does not, and I did not want to see it happen twice. Emily heard her own voice come out much quieter than she intended. Sir, that is not what it sounded like. No, Mercer said. It would not have. I have a way of saying things. He rubbed his face with one hand. Captain Schwab, I've been a colonel for 6 years. I am very good at protecting a mission and very bad at protecting a person. This morning I ran you over in front of 40 officers because you were slowing down a rescue. I would like to say I regret the method. I do not regret the priority. That is the worst apology I have ever heard, sir, Emily said. And Grant Mercer barked out a laugh, one hard, ugly sound, and said, yes, it probably is. Caldwell said, Grant, Ray Dunham. Mercer's laugh died. Sir. 4 people saw the final corridor. Me, you, Dunham, and a GS-9 named Walker. I know where I was. You are sitting in front of me. Tell me about Dunham. Sir Ray Dunham has 19 years a wife with multiple sclerosis and he plays golf badly. That is not what I asked. Mercer hesitated. Colonel, Caldwell said. He put his papers in 6 weeks ago, sir, Mercer said. Retirement effective in the spring. And he has a job lined up. The room got very quiet. With who? Caldwell said. Sir, I do not remember the name of the company. Grant Pictrano, Mercer said. Apex Defense Solutions. Emily wrote it in Ortiz's notebook herself in block letters, and her hand was steady, and she was surprised by that. Sir, she said. Who runs Apex? A man named Victor Kane, Mercer said. He was a major in this army 22 years ago. Now he owns 4,000 people in a building in Northern Virginia with his name on the front of it, and he has been trying to eat the contractor support piece of overseas rescue coordination for 2 years, and he lost that bid in March. Lost it to who, sir? To us, Mercer said, to the Army doing it in-house, because we do it better and cheaper, and the committee agreed. And how would a public failure of a rescue operation affect that decision, sir? Nobody answered her. They did not have to. At 1955, Emily and Ortiz sat in the SCIF with the door locked behind them, and they watched a ridgeline on the other side of the world do absolutely nothing. Ma'am, it has been 12 hours. I know. If the general suspended the mission at 0736 and somebody in that room told them, they should have already broken. I know, Miguel. So maybe nobody told them. Or maybe, Emily said, whoever told them has not had a chance to make a phone call yet. Ortiz turned in his chair. Ma'am, that is worse. Yes, that means they are still in the building. Yes. At 2140, General Caldwell selected an alternate corridor for Operation Silent Horizon, and he did it in a room with 4 people in it and no computer turned on. Emily had insisted on that. She had walked into his office at 2118 and said, Sir, I am about to say something that sounds insane, and he had said, Say it anyway, Captain. You are on a streak. Sir, do not put the new route in the system. Captain, I cannot plan a rescue on a napkin. You can plan it out loud, sir, for 24 hours. Say it in this room to these people and let nobody write it down and let me watch that ridge. You want to use my mission as bait. No, sir. I want to use the absence of my mission as bait. If the enemy repositions to the new corridor in the next 24 hours, then whatever gets said in this room reaches them, and there are 4 of us in this room and 1 of us is a problem. Caldwell looked at Mercer. Mercer said, "Sir, that is either the smartest or the stupidest thing I have heard this year." "Which one, Grant?" "Ask me in 24 hours, sir." So at 21:40, the 4 of them, Caldwell, Mercer, Hobbs, and Emily, stood around a paper map with a grease pencil and picked a second corridor, the southern approach through the dry riverbed, longer by 9 minutes and uglier in every way. And when they were done, Caldwell folded that map into quarters and put it inside his own jacket. "Nobody says these grid coordinates out loud outside this room," he said. "Not to your deputy, not on a secure line, not in a car. If this leaks, it leaks from one of us, and if it leaks from one of us, I will know exactly who to look at, and God help him." "Yes, sir," they said. Emily got home at 23:20 and did not sleep. At 02:47, her phone rang, and it was Ortiz, and she was already awake. "Ma'am?" His voice was wrong. "Ma'am, you need to come in." "They moved?" "Ma'am, they moved." Emily was on the road in 6 minutes. She did not remember getting dressed. She remembered the sergeant at the gate looking at her ID for a second too long and thinking he has heard it too. Everybody has heard it by now. She got to the SCIF at 03:19 and Ortiz had 4 screens up and his hands were shaking. "Talk to me, Miguel." 0147 local, ma'am. 6 vehicles come off the reverse slope. I thought, okay, here we go. They got the word. They are breaking station. But they did not break station. "No, ma'am." Ortiz put his finger on the screen. "They went south." Emily leaned in, and everything inside her went cold and clean and very, very quiet. 6 vehicles moving in the dark, 11 kilometers south of a position they had held for 11 days, spreading out along the high ground on both sides of a dry riverbed. The dry riverbed. The 1-4 people in the United States Army had chosen with a grease pencil 5 hours and 37 minutes earlier. "Ma'am," Ortiz said. "Ma'am, please tell me I am reading this wrong." "You are not reading it wrong." "Ma'am, that is the new route." "Yes." "Nobody wrote the new route down." "No." "Ma'am, then how?" And Emily Carter said, "Because one of the 4 of us has a telephone." She called Caldwell's personal line at 0331, and he picked up before the first ring finished. "Say it, Captain." "Sir, they moved at 0147 their time. 6 vehicles. They are setting into the southern riverbed." Silence. "Sir." "Say the time again." 0147, local, sir. That is 5 hours and 37 minutes after we stood around your map. 5 hours. "Yes, sir." "Captain, I want you to understand what you are telling a 4-star general at 3:30 in the morning." "Sir, I am telling you that the leak was standing in the room with us." "Yes," Caldwell said, "you are." "Sir, do you want me to say the names?" "No." "Sir." "Captain, I have known Grant Mercer for 19 years. I promoted Dennis Hobbs myself, and you." He stopped. "And you I have known for 11 months, and you are the one who told me to leave the route out of the system, which means if you wanted that route to be untraceable, you built a very clever way to make it so." Emily sat down slowly in a chair she did not remember pulling out. "Yes, sir," she said. "That is correct. Do not sound wounded." "I am not wounded, sir. I am agreeing with you. If I were you, I would suspect me too." "Then you understand why I am about to say what I am about to say." "Sir, there is going to be an inquiry, Captain. It is going to be aimed at you, and I am not going to stop it." The floor of her stomach fell out. "Sir, if I shut down an inquiry into you, then the day we catch this man, every piece of evidence you touch becomes the general protecting his pet analyst. Your work has to survive daylight. So it is going to get daylight, and it is going to hurt, and you are going to let it." "Sir, they have my medical file." "I know. They have the IG complaint." "I know that too." "Sir, they are going to say I am unstable, and then everything I have found becomes the report a crazy person wrote, and it will not matter what is in it." "Yes," Caldwell said. "That is exactly what they are going to do." Emily closed her eyes. "Then what do I do, sir?" "You do not blink," Caldwell said. "That is all. Every human being they send at you is going to be waiting for you to raise your voice because the second you raise your voice, you become the file. So you do not raise your voice. You answer every question. You produce every document. And you make it so boring and so exact that the only interesting thing left in the room is the thing you found. Sir, that is going to be very hard. Yes. How long, sir? Weeks, Captain. And the 11 men in the basement. Caldwell did not answer that. At 06:02, Emily was ordered to report to the office of the staff judge advocate. At 06:15, a lieutenant colonel she had never met told her very politely that a commander's inquiry had been initiated regarding an unauthorized disclosure of classified planning material, that she was not accused of anything, and that as a precautionary administrative measure, her access was being suspended pending review. Suspended, Emily said. Suspended, Captain. Not revoked. There is a difference. Sir is there, legally, yes. And practically, the lieutenant colonel looked at his desk. Practically, Captain, you should call your husband and tell him it is going to be a long month. I do not have a husband, sir. Then call whoever you have. At 08:34, Emily Carter walked back into her own SCIF with a security escort and was told to remove her personal items and hand over her badge. Ortiz stood up so fast his chair fell over. Sir, he said to the escort, there has been a mistake. Sergeant, sit down. Sir, this officer has been in that chair for 30 of the last 48 hours. Sergeant. Miguel, Emily said. Ma'am, no, ma'am, they are going to bury it. Miguel. And Sergeant First Class Miguel Ortiz, who had done 4 deployments and buried 2 friends and never once raised his voice at an officer, turned around and put his hand flat against the wall and stood there with his back to everybody in the room, while a captain took a coffee mug and a photograph of her father off a desk and put them in a box. Emily got to the door. She stopped. Sergeant Ortiz. Ma'am, you are still cleared and the mission is still suspended and there is still a ridgeline. Ortiz turned around. Yes, ma'am. Then watch it. Yes, ma'am. And Miguel. Ma'am, paper, Emily said. At 09:10, she walked out through the main corridor of the building where she had worked for 11 months carrying a cardboard box past a break room full of people who stopped talking. She counted. 22 people saw her. 19 of them looked away. 2 of them looked at her with pity, which was somehow worse than the looking away. And one of them, a warrant officer named Beth Kowalczyk, who had never said more than good morning to her, stepped out into the hallway, took the box out of Emily's hands without asking, and carried it all the way to her car in the parking lot without saying a single word. At the car, she handed it back. Ma'am, she said, my mother was a nurse for 31 years. She used to say when they start talking about your character instead of your evidence, it means your evidence is good. Emily could not speak. Have a good day, ma'am, Kowalczyk said, and walked back inside. At 11:27, sitting in her car in the parking lot of a grocery store, because she could not make herself drive home to an empty house, Emily heard somebody knock on her passenger window and nearly came out of her skin. It was a kid. That was the first thing she thought. A kid in a wrinkled polo shirt with a government badge clipped to his belt and a face the color of paper. Ma'am, his voice cracked. Ma'am, please. 2 minutes. Who are you, trying? Daniel Walker, ma'am. From planning. I make the slides. Emily unlocked the door. He got in and shut it and immediately looked in the side mirror, and then he looked in the side mirror again 11 seconds later, and Emily watched him do it and felt something in her chest go tight. Mr. Walker? Ma'am, I need you to know I did not know. Did not know what? Any of it. He was crying. He was trying very hard not to, and it was not working. Ma'am, I am 26 years old. I have $81,000 in student loans, and my mom has dialysis 3 days a week, and I make $62,000 a year. Daniel. Ma'am, they said it was a compliance audit. Emily made herself sit very still. Who said? A woman. She said she was from a firm doing an independent readiness assessment under a congressional inquiry. She had a card. She had a whole website, ma'am. I checked. I actually checked. What did she want? Metadata. He said it like a confession in a church. That is all. That is all she ever asked for at first. Version histories, timestamps, which documents got edited how many times. She said it was about process efficiency, about how long staff work takes. She said it was going into a report about wasted man hours. And you gave it to her. Ma'am, it was not classified. I swear to God, not one thing she asked for in the first 4 months was classified. 4 months. Daniel Walker put both hands over his face. Daniel, how much did they pay you? $1,200 a month, he said into his hands. As a consulting fee. On a real one, 099, ma'am. I reported it on my taxes. I thought I was doing paperwork on the side. Emily closed her eyes. That was it. That was the whole thing. Not of a traitor, not a spy. A tired kid with a sick mother walked down a hallway one polite step at a time by somebody who knew exactly how to do it until the day the door at the end of the hallway opened, and it was too late to say no because he had already said yes 400 times. When did it change? She said, the 14th. What happened on the 14th? She asked me which folder the quarter overlay was in. And you told her. Ma'am, I told her the folder name. He was shaking now. Just the name, that is all. And she said thank you, and that was the last time she ever called me, and 3 days later you stood up in that room. Emily sat with that. Daniel, look at me. He looked at her. You did not need to give her the route, Emily said quietly. You gave her the location of the route. Somebody else opened it. Yes, ma'am. You knew that. I figured it out at about 2 in the morning on Tuesday, ma'am, and I have not slept since. Then why are you in my car? Why not the IG? Why not CID? And Daniel Walker said, because the woman called me again yesterday at 15:02. Emily's whole body went cold. What did she say? She did not say anything, ma'am. She sent me a photograph. He got out his phone with hands that would not work properly and dropped it and picked it up and turned it around. That is my mother's dialysis center. That is the front door. That picture was taken yesterday at 14:40. Emily looked at that photograph for a long moment. Then she said, give me the name of the firm. Meridian Compliance Group. And who owns Meridian? Ma'am, that is the thing. He wiped his face with the back of his wrist. I sat there all night looking. Meridian is registered in Delaware. Meridian is owned by a holding company in Nevada. And that holding company files under the same registered agent as a company called Apex Defense Solutions. There it was again, Apex. Daniel, Emily said, do you have proof of any of this? Anything I can put in front of a general? Ma'am, I have every email. You kept them on my Ma'am, I am a GS9 who makes slides, Daniel Walker said. Nobody ever taught me anything except to save everything. Emily's heart started going. Where are they? Not on a government machine, not in my apartment, somewhere else. He shook his head hard. Ma'am, I am not telling you where until I know what happens to me. Daniel, ma'am, I am going to prison. You might be. He blinked at her. You want me to lie to you? Emily said. I will not do that. You took money. You handed over information you should not have handed over. There is a real chance you go to prison, and there is a real chance you are ruined either way. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Then here's the other half. Right now there are 11 Americans in a basement, and there is a rescue force that is going to walk into a riverbed with people on both sides of it, and you are the only person alive who can prove why. If you walk into a room with me and General Caldwell, and you put those emails on the table, then the worst thing you ever did becomes the reason 26 soldiers come home. That is not nothing, Daniel. That is not nothing at all. Daniel Walker cried hard for about 15 seconds and then stopped like somebody had shut a valve. Tomorrow, he said, tomorrow morning, I need one night to get them. Daniel, ma'am, please, one night. Where there is a diner on Bragg Boulevard, the one with the blue sign, 0730. I will bring everything. Daniel, come with me right now. Ma'am, I cannot. He looked in the side mirror again. If I disappear today, they will know. If I go to work tomorrow like normal and I am just late, that is nothing, people are late. And then he opened the door. Daniel. He stopped half out of the car. Ma'am, you said the woman called you at 15:02 yesterday. Yes, ma'am. Do you know what happened at 14:47 yesterday? No, ma'am. Somebody used a 4-star general's authorization code to pull my sealed personnel file, Emily said. 15 minutes before she called you. Daniel Walker stood in the parking lot of a grocery store and stared at her. Ma'am, he said, she is not outside the wire, is she? No, Emily said. I do not think she is. At 13:40, Emily Carter sat at her kitchen table with a legal pad and did the only thing she had left, which was read. Ortiz called her from a landline at 1410. Ma'am, Apex Defense Solutions. Victor Kane, Chief Executive. Former Major resigned his commission in 2004. Company does logistics, support, personnel, recovery, coordination, crisis response consulting. Revenue. Ma'am, last public number I can find is 1.4 billion. In the contract they lost in March. Overseas personnel, recovery support. Ma'am, it is 890 million over 5 years. Emily put down her pen. Say that number again, Miguel. 890 million, ma'am. And who decides whether that decision gets revisited? Ma'am, that is the part that made me sick. There is a subcommittee reviewing rescue and recovery capability. There is a hearing scheduled. It is in 6 weeks. 6 weeks, Emily said. That's all. Yes, ma'am. Miguel, if Operation Silent Horizon had gone Thursday night and 26 soldiers had walked into that corridor, when would the news have broken? Ortiz was quiet. Ma'am, inside of a day. And what would the hearing have been about 6 weeks later? Ma'am, Ortiz said, and his voice cracked. It would have been about how the Army cannot do this in-house. Yes. Ma'am, 26 soldiers. Yes. Ma'am, that is not a leak. That is not somebody selling secrets for money. That is a man ordering a massacre for a contract. Yes, Miguel, Emily said. That is exactly what it is. Her phone rang at 16:52. It was an unknown number, and she almost did not answer it, and afterwards she was glad she had. Captain Carter. Speaking. Captain, my name is Victor Kane. Emily reached over very slowly and turned the burner on the stove off under a pot she had forgotten she was cooking. Mr. Kane, I hope this is not an intrusion. I got your number from a mutual acquaintance. His voice was warm. That was the thing that stayed with her. It was a genuinely warm voice, the kind of voice that has been good at rooms for 30 years. Captain, I heard you had a difficult week. Did you? Fort Liberty is a small town, and small towns talk. I understand you had your access suspended this morning. That was 7 hours ago, Mr. Kane. Was it? A light laugh. Then somebody talks quickly. Somebody does. Captain, I will not waste your time. I run a company that employs about 4,000 people, and a third of them wore the uniform, and I have never once regretted hiring one of them. What I look for is not medals. What I look for is people who see a problem before it is a problem and are willing to be unpopular about it. I am told you did exactly that this week, and I am told it cost you. Are you offering me a job, Mr. Kane? I am offering you a conversation. At what salary? Well, Kane said for a director-level position with our analysis group, we would be somewhere in the range of 240, plus equity, and a relocation package, of course. Emily looked at the wall of her kitchen. Mr. Kane, can I ask you something? Please. Do you make a habit of calling captains at home? There was a pause, just a beat, a quarter second. I make a habit of calling talented people, Kane said. Rank has never impressed me. 22 years ago, I had a colonel tell me I was a very good staff officer, which in his mouth was an insult, and I resigned my commission 9 months later, and I have never been happier. Captain, I know what it feels like to be the smartest person in a room where nobody is required to listen to you. And Emily thought that is very good. That is genuinely very good. He has done that speech before, and it has worked before. Mr. Kane, may I be direct? I would prefer it. I have not applied for a job. I have not put my name anywhere. I was suspended this morning, and by this evening, the chief executive of a defense contractor with a $1.4 billion revenue line has my home telephone number. She let that sit. I am a very small person, sir. Why am I worth a phone call? The silence on the line lasted 3 full seconds. When Victor Kane spoke again, the warmth was still there. That was the frightening part. It had not gone anywhere. Captain, he said, may I give you a piece of advice from a man who was once exactly where you are? Please. An institution can only absorb so much correction from below. You gave it 1. That was brave. If you give it 2, it will not argue with you. It will simply decide that you're the problem, and it will be right in its own way because the institution has to keep working after you and I are both dead. A pause. The people who love you are going to spend the next year watching you convince yourself that you are being persecuted for being right. And you may even be right, but you will still be the one who ends up in Alabama. Emily's hand tightened on the phone. Alabama, she said. It is a figure of speech. Is it Mr. Kane? Because I heard a name this week. Major Sandra Voss. Nothing, not one sound on the line. Mr. Kane. I do not know that name, Victor Kane said. And Emily Carter, 32 years old, suspended unarmed, sitting at her own kitchen table, said the bravest thing she had ever said in her life, and said it in a completely level voice. Yes, you do. The line stayed open for 4 more seconds. Captain Carter, Kane said pleasantly, the offer will stand for 1 week. After that, I am afraid the world will have moved on. It always does. Have a good evening. He hung up. Emily sat there for a long time. Then she picked up the phone and called General Caldwell's personal line, and when he answered, she said, Sir Victor Kane just called my house and offered me $240,000 a year, and when I said the name, Sandra Voss, out loud, he stopped talking for 4 seconds. Caldwell said, write it down, every word, timestamp it, sign it. Yes, sir. Captain. Sir. He called you because he is worried. Men like that do not spend money on people who do not frighten them. A pause. That means you have something and you do not know what it is yet. Sir, I know exactly what I have, Emily said. His name is Daniel Walker. He is 26. He has been taking $1,200 a month from a shell company called Meridian, and he kept every single email. She heard the general stand up. Where is he? He is meeting me at 07:30 tomorrow, sir. Diner on Bragg. Captain, get him tonight. Sir, I tried. He would not come. Then send somebody. Sir, with respect, if I send military police to that boy's apartment, tonight he runs, and we lose him, and we lose the emails. Caldwell breathed out hard. 07:30, he said. Yes, sir. I will be at that diner at 07:15 in civilian clothes with Hobbs, and Grant Mercer will be sitting in a truck in the parking lot, and I do not care what any of that does to my calendar. Sir, are you sure about Mercer? No, Caldwell said. That is why I want him where I can see him. Emily did not sleep again. At 6:48, she was in the parking lot of the diner on Bragg Boulevard. At 7:03, a gray pickup truck pulled in 4 spaces down, and Colonel Grant Mercer nodded at her once through the windshield. At 07:11, General Robert Caldwell of the United States Army walked into a roadside diner wearing a fishing shirt and a ball cap and ordered coffee and eggs, like a retired man with nowhere to be, and Major Hobbs sat in the booth behind him reading a newspaper he was not reading. At 7:30, Daniel Walker did not arrive. At 7:41, Emily called his cell phone. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail. At 7:52, she called it again. It rang twice, then it stopped ringing. Somebody had rejected the call. Emily stared at her phone. At 07:58, a text message arrived from Daniel Walker's number. It said, I am sorry, I cannot do this. Please do not contact me again. Emily read it 4 times. Then she got up and walked over to a table where an old man in a fishing shirt was eating eggs, and she set her phone down in front of him, and she said very quietly, Sir, read that. Caldwell read it. He got scared, Hobbs said from the next booth. Sir, the kid got scared. It happens. No, Emily said. Ma'am, with respect. Major Daniel Walker sat in my car yesterday and called me ma'am 40 times. He said, please. He apologized for taking up my time while he was crying. She picked the phone back up. Read it again. Read the whole thing. Caldwell read it again, and then Emily watched a 4-star general's face change for the 2nd time in 3 days. There is no ma'am, Caldwell said. There is no ma'am, sir, Emily said. That boy could not order a cheeseburger without saying ma'am. Somebody else is holding that phone. Her own phone rang in her hand. Ortiz. She answered it and said Miguel. And Sergeant First Class Miguel Ortiz, who had driven to a young man's apartment complex at 6:30 in the morning on his own initiative without telling anybody, said, ma'am, his car is here. His door is unlocked. His coffee is on the counter and it is still warm. Emily could not make her voice work. Ma'am, Ortiz said, he is gone. At 7:59, Emily Carter stood in a diner parking lot on Bragg Boulevard and heard a sergeant say the word gone, and her whole body went numb from the shoulders down. Miguel, do not touch anything. Ma'am, I already came inside. His door was open. Get out of the apartment. Ma'am. Miguel, get out of that apartment right now. If somebody took that boy and you are standing in the middle of it, then in 4 hours a report gets written that says a sergeant loyal to Captain Carter was found in the missing man's residence. Her voice cracked on the last word. Do you understand what they will build with that? There was a long silence. Yes, ma'am, Ortiz said. I'm walking out. Stand by your vehicle. Do not leave. Call the county sheriff, not the military police. Ma'am, why the sheriff? Because the sheriff does not work for anybody in that building, Emily said. By 0808, General Caldwell was on his own phone in the parking lot with his ball cap still on his head, and Emily watched a man who had commanded divisions speak to somebody in a voice she had not heard from him before, low and fast and stripped of every courtesy. He hung up. CID is rolling, he said. Not the local office. I called Quantico direct. Sir, I will hear about that. Good, Caldwell said. Let them hear it. Somebody just took a 26-year-old civilian off my installation, and I want the man responsible to spend today wondering how loud I am willing to be. Mercer came across the lot from the gray truck, and he was not doing his colonel voice either. Sir, we have a problem with sequence. Say it. That boy was alive at 0630 because his coffee was warm. Captain Carter spoke to him at 11:27 yesterday, which means somebody knew about a meeting that only 4 people knew about. 5, Emily said. Daniel knew. Ma'am, Daniel is not the leak, Mercer said. Not this time. If he wanted to run, he does not leave his car. Hobbs said, Sir, could he have told somebody? He was terrified, Major. He was not chatty. Then how? Emily said very quietly. His phone. They all looked at her. Sir, he called me from his cell phone. He sat in my car and he showed me a photograph on his cell phone. He was already being handled. If they had software on that device, they did not need a leak. They watched him decide. Caldwell took his hat off and ran a hand over his head. Captain, he said, where are the emails? Sir, he would not tell me. He said he needed one night to get them. Then either he got them, Caldwell said, or somebody now has both the boy and the proof. At 0930, the inquiry started. It did not start with a knock on a door or a summons. It started with a phone call from a captain in the staff judge advocate's office who apologized twice and then told her that her interview had been moved up to 1300 that afternoon and that she was entitled to counsel and that she was still not accused of anything. Sir, at 0615 yesterday, you told me weeks. Yes, ma'am. It has been 27 hours. Yes, ma'am, the captain said. I did not make the schedule. Who did? Ma'am, I am not going to be able to answer that. She sat in her car and looked at a phone for a while, and then she did the thing that Caldwell had told her to do, which was to be boring. She drove home, she showered, she put on her uniform, she made a list on a legal pad of every fact she could prove and every fact she could only believe, and she drew a line down the middle of the page, and the left side was much shorter than the right side, and she made herself look at that until it stopped hurting. At 1300, she walked into a conference room with 3 officers in it and a recorder on the table. At 1304, they asked her about the folder. At 1319, they asked her about the folder again. At 1341, the lieutenant colonel across from her turned a page and said, Captain, in March of 2017, you were referred to behavioral health. And there it was. Yes, sir. Can you tell us about that? Sir, is that relevant to an unauthorized disclosure? It goes to reliability. Who's sir? The lieutenant colonel looked up. Say that again, Captain. I am asking, whose reliability, sir? Emily said, and she kept her voice absolutely flat because a man in an old ball cap had told her not to blink, and she had decided at 4 o'clock that morning that she was never going to blink again as long as she lived. Because my access was suspended 31 hours ago, and in that time somebody released a sealed file under a 4-star general's code, and a government employee vanished out of his apartment with the coffee still warm. If this inquiry is about reliability, sir, I would like to know why nobody is asking about theirs. Nobody said anything for a moment. Answer the question, Captain. Yes, sir. In February of 2017, my father died. In March of 2017, my commander noticed that I was working 19-hour days and not going home, and she referred me to behavioral health, and I went and I completed 4 sessions, and the clinician recommended no follow-up and no duty limitation. That is the entire referral. It is 1 page long. You are holding it. It says here you reported difficulty sleeping. Sir, my father had been dead for 3 weeks. Captain, I am not trying to. Sir, may I say one thing and then I will answer anything you want for as long as you want. Go ahead. That page has been sealed since 2017, Emily said. 9 years, and it left the vault 11 hours after I stood up in a briefing. I do not know who is in this room in the sense that matters. But whoever asked you to open that page did not do it because they were worried about my sleep. The recorder ran for 6 more seconds of nothing. Then the lieutenant colonel reached over and pushed the page aside face down and said, "Let us go back to the imagery, Captain." It was the smallest possible mercy, and Emily took it, and she talked about grid coordinates for 2 more hours. She got out at 15:52. By 16:10, it was on the internet. It came from a defense news site with a decent reputation. 600 words under a byline she did not recognize, and the headline said that a rescue operation for 11 Americans had been abruptly halted at Fort Liberty over what the article called an internal dispute, and that officials familiar with the matter had described the objection as coming from a junior intelligence officer with a history of stress-related evaluation. They did not print her name. They did not have to. There was exactly one junior intelligence officer at Fort Liberty who had stood up in that briefing, and by 1640 her phone had 11 messages on it, and one of them was from a cousin in Ohio asking if she was okay. At 16:55, Ortiz called her from a gas station landline. "Ma'am, have you seen it?" "I have seen it." "Ma'am, it says the mission was halted." "I know." "Ma'am, it names the number 11 Americans. That is not public." Emily stopped moving. "Say that again, Miguel." "The hostage count, ma'am. 11. That was never released. The press has been saying a group of American contractors for 4 days. Nobody outside the building has that number." And Emily Carter sat down on the edge of her own bed and understood something that made her feel physically ill. "Miguel," she said, "they did not leak a story about me." "Ma'am, they leaked classified information in order to tell a story about me." Her voice was shaking now, and she let it. "They put a real number in a public article to make the article credible. That is a felony. That is somebody committing a federal crime to make sure that when I open my mouth, the room hears a crazy woman." "Ma'am, and Miguel, do you understand what it means that they were willing to do that?" "Ma'am, it means they are not afraid of getting caught." "No," Emily said. "It means they think this ends inside of a week." At 18:02, General Caldwell called an emergency meeting in his office, and there were 6 people in it, and Emily was one of them, and she had no badge and no access, and she walked past the security desk on the personal signature of a 4-star general who had written her name on a piece of paper with his own pen. "Sit," he said. "Everybody sit. Hobbs, tell them." Hobbs looked like he had aged 4 years since the diner. "Sir, at 14:47 2 days ago, the authorization code was used to pull Captain Carter's file. I have now traced the terminal." "Say it." "It was executed from a workstation in the office of the Deputy Chief of Staff." Mercer's head came up. "Which workstation, Major?" "Sir, the front desk terminal. Shared login. 11 people use it a day." "Of course it was," Mercer said. "Sir, there is more," Hobbs said. "I pulled the badge access log for that office for that hour. Between 1440 and 1455, there were 4 badge swipes. Librairie. 3 of them were staff who were physically in a meeting on the 2nd floor at the time, which I confirmed because that meeting had a sign-in sheet. And the 4th. Sir, the 4th swipe was Colonel Deschler's." Nobody spoke. Emily said, "Sir, who is Colonel Deschler?" And it was Mercer who answered, and his voice was strange. "Colonel Marianne Deschler is the Deputy Chief of Staff of this installation, Captain," he said. "She is the officer I went to 14 months ago about Major Sandra Voss." Emily's skin went cold all the way down her arms. "Sir, she is the one who told you it was a personal matter." "Yes," Sir Hobbs said, and he was holding the edge of the desk. "She is also the officer who killed both of my memos about the authorization binder. Not staffed, not disapproved, returned to me by hand with a note that said, 'This is a solution in search of a problem.'" Caldwell had not moved in 90 seconds. "Dennis," he said, "do you know what you are telling me?" "Sir, I am telling you a badge swipe and 2 memos. That is all I have. And a woman who buried the last officer who asked a question," Mercer said. "Grant." "Sir, I am not going to be quiet about it this time. I was quiet 14 months ago, and Sandra Voss is answering phones in Alabama." Colonel, sir, with respect, you asked me 19 years ago to tell you when I thought you were wrong, and you have not asked me since, and I stopped, and that is on me. The room got very still. Caldwell looked at Mercer for a long moment. That is fair, he said. Sir, I said that is fair, Grant. Sit down. Emily said, General, may I ask a question that is going to sound accusatory? You have asked me nothing else all week, Captain. Sir, who selected the officers for the Silent Horizon planning cell? Caldwell went still. Deschler, he said. The Deputy Chief of Staff builds every planning cell on this installation. That is her job. So she chose the room, sir? Yes. And she chose the GS-9 who carries the binders? Yes. Sir, Emily said. Then she did not need to be in the room. At 1927, Emily drove home with her hands at 10 and 2 like a student driver because she did not trust herself. And she made it 11 miles before she pulled into a church parking lot and put her forehead on the steering wheel and cried for 4 minutes with the engine running. Then she stopped. Then she wiped her face with a fast food napkin and drove the rest of the way home. And she did not tell anybody about the 4 minutes, not then and not ever. At 21:16, somebody knocked on her front door. She looked through the window, and it was Warrant Officer Beth Kowalczyk in civilian clothes holding a casserole dish. Emily opened the door and just stared at her. Ma'am, Kowalczyk said, it is chicken and rice. I am not good at this part. Beth, ma'am, half the building read that article today, and about a third of them believed it, and I have been listening to it all afternoon, and I could not go home and eat dinner like a normal person. She pushed the dish forward. Also, there are 9 people in my section who do not believe a word of it and did not know how to say so. So I said I would bring you a casserole and tell you that. Emily took the dish and could not say anything for a second. Thank you, she managed. Ma'am, may I say the other thing? Please. They started with your father, Kowalczyk said. They took the worst month of your life and they made it a personality trait. I have been in this army 22 years, and I have never wanted to hit anybody the way I wanted to hit somebody today. Beth, ma'am, do not say that in the building. No, ma'am, that is why I said it on your porch. At 02:12, Emily's phone rang, unknown number, local area code. She had it to her ear before the second ring. Carter, nothing, breathing, somebody breathing very fast. Daniel, ma'am, his voice was destroyed. Ma'am, please do not hang up. Emily was already on her feet. Daniel, where are you? I cannot tell you that. Daniel, ma'am, they came at 06:21 yesterday. 2 men, not in uniform. He was talking too fast, running the words together. They knocked and they said they were from the Defense Counterintelligence Agency, and they had lanyards, ma'am. They had real-looking lanyards, and I opened the door because what else do you do? Daniel, are you hurt? No, ma'am, they did not touch me. That is the thing. They were so polite. He made a sound that was not quite a laugh. They sat in my kitchen and told me that I had committed 6 federal offenses and that if I met with you at 07:30, I would be arrested in a public place in front of everybody and my mother would find out from the news. And then one of them asked me what dialysis center my mother uses. He asked it like he was making conversation, ma'am. Like he was asking about the weather. Emily closed her eyes, and then they took my phone and one of them typed something on it, while the other one stood there smiling at me, and then they gave it back and said, we will be in touch, and they walked out. They left you there. Yes, ma'am. Daniel, they were not there to take you. They were there to make you stop. Ma'am, I know that now. I sat on my kitchen floor for about 20 minutes, and then I got up and I walked out the back, and I have been in my aunt's basement in Sanford since 10 o'clock yesterday morning, and I have not turned on a light. Your car is still at your apartment. Yes, ma'am, I walked. It is 4 miles to the bus. Emily sat down slowly. Daniel listened to me very carefully. Do you still have the emails? Silence. Daniel. Ma'am, I have 411 emails, 31 text threads, every bank deposit in the original consulting agreement with a signature on it, he said. They are on 2 drives. One of them is in a lockbox at a bank in Fayetteville under my mother's maiden name. The other one is taped underneath the bottom drawer of a filing cabinet in the storage unit my father rented in 2009 and never closed. Emily's whole chest went hot. Daniel, why did you do that? Why 2? Because I am a GS9 who makes slides, ma'am, he said. And because 8 months ago, the woman told me something that made me sick, and I never forgot it. What did she tell you? She said, Danny, do not worry about paperwork. Nobody ever gets in trouble for what is written down. People get in trouble for what they say out loud. Emily's mouth had gone completely dry. Daniel, I need you to describe her. Ma'am, I only met her face-to-face twice. Describe her anyway. Mid-40s, maybe 50, dark blonde hair always up, short, really short, ma'am, like 5'2", and she stood like she was 6 feet tall. He swallowed, and she never once looked at a menu. Both times we met, she ordered without opening it like she had decided before she walked in. Emily got up and went to her laptop and opened the public command page of Fort Liberty, the one anybody in the world could look at, the one with the photographs of the senior staff, and she scrolled down past the general and past the chief of staff, and she stopped. Daniel, I am going to send you a photograph. Do not react until you look at it. Ma'am, I do not have a phone that. You are on a phone right now. It is my aunt's. Then give me the number. He gave it to her. She sent it at 0231. The line was quiet for 11 seconds, 12, 13. Then Daniel Walker made a sound Emily had never heard a grown man make. Ma'am? Say it. That is her. You are certain. Ma'am, that is her. That is the woman. That is... He was breathing wrong. Ma'am, why does she have a rank on her shoulder? Emily looked at the photograph on her screen, at a small, dark blonde woman standing very straight in a dress uniform at the caption under it that read Deputy Chief of Staff, and she heard herself answer in a voice that did not sound like her own. Because she has been in that building the entire time, Daniel, she said. She built the room. She picked you. And 2 days ago, she walked 11 feet to a shared computer and opened my life up like a filing cabinet, and then she went to lunch. At 0244, Emily Carter called a 4-star general's personal line for the 3rd night in a row, and when he answered, she did not say good morning. Sir, it is Deschler. The pause on the other end lasted 2 seconds. Say it again, Captain. Daniel Walker is alive. He is in a basement in Sanford. He identified Colonel Marianne Deschler from the public command photograph 40 seconds ago, sir. Positive. No hesitation. She heard the bed springs. She heard a lamp click on. He met her face to face. Twice, sir. She recruited him herself. She told him she was from a compliance firm doing a congressional readiness assessment, and she handed him a business card, and she has been paying him $1,200 a month for 4 months through a shell called Meridian. Captain, a photograph is not evidence. No, sir, it is not. But 411 emails, 31 text threads, the deposit records, and a signed consulting agreement are. The general said nothing at all for a moment. He has them. He has them on 2 drives, sir, one in a lockbox in Fayetteville, one taped under a filing cabinet in a storage unit his father rented in 2009. 2, sir, because he was afraid. Thank God for frightened people, Caldwell said. At 0301, Caldwell made the hardest call of his career, and Emily heard him make it because he did not hang up on her to do it. He conferenced her in. Grant, wake up. Sir, I am awake. I have been awake. Deschler. Mercer did not ask what about her. He did not ask, are you certain? There was a long breath on the line, and then Colonel Grant Mercer said in a voice like gravel, Sir, I want to be on record about something before we go one step further. Go. 14 months ago, I put Sandra Voss in that woman's hands myself. I walked into her office, and I told her exactly what Voss had found and exactly how worried I was, and I gave her the name of an officer who trusted me. A pause. Sir, I handed her the target. Grant. I am not asking for absolution, sir. I am telling you that when this is over, somebody knows I said it out loud and not after it was safe. Noted, Caldwell said. Now get dressed. At 4:02, Emily made a decision that she would be asked about under oath 11 times over the next year, and she made it in her kitchen with her hands flat on the counter. Sir, we cannot get those drives with a warrant. Captain, we absolutely can get those drives with a warrant. Sir, a warrant goes through a process, and that process runs through the office of the Deputy Chief of Staff for installation coordination. And she will know inside of an hour, and there will be a fire in that storage unit by noon. Then what do you propose? Sir, the storage unit was rented by Daniel's late father. The lease is in a dead man's name. Daniel is the executor of the estate. He can consent to a search of his own property right now tonight with no paper anywhere on this installation. You want to send CID agents to a storage unit in the dark on a civilian's verbal consent. No, sir, Emily said. I want you to send them, and I want you to call Quantico directly and not the local office. And I want the agents to be people you have known for 20 years and not people somebody assigned to you. Caldwell was quiet. Captain, do you understand that you are telling a general officer to trust nobody in his own headquarters? Yes, sir. Do you understand how that sounds? Sir, it sounds insane, Emily said. It sounded insane 4 days ago when I said the enemy was on that ridge 6 days early. Every single time I have been right this week, sir, it has sounded insane first. The silence went on. Her name is Renata Poole, Caldwell said finally. She was a warrant officer under me in 2004. She has been a special agent for 19 years, and she despises me personally for something I said at a promotion board in 2011. Sir, that is perfect. Yes, Caldwell said. It is. At 0538, Special Agent Renata Poole and 2 agents met Daniel Walker in a church parking lot in Sanford, and Daniel Walker sat in the back of a government vehicle and shook so hard that Poole had to hold the cup while he drank water. He signed a consent form at 0551. He gave them the storage unit at 0603. At 0647, an agent taped under a filing cabinet drawer found a drive and a sandwich bag. At 0712, Renata Poole called General Caldwell and said 11 words. It is real. It is all real. Sir, this is enormous. At 800, Emily Carter walked into the headquarters building at Fort Liberty with no badge, no access, and no idea whether she still had a career, and she rode the elevator with 2 majors who stopped talking when the doors closed. She smiled at them. Neither one smiled back. She thought 3 days ago that hurt. It does not hurt anymore. And she was almost frightened by how much that was true. At 0819, Colonel Marianne Deschler was invited to the general's office for what her calendar described as an installation readiness sync. She arrived at 0827, 3 minutes early, holding a leather folio and a coffee, and she was very small and very straight, and she smiled at everybody in the outer office by name, including the specialist at the front desk, whose sister she asked about. Then she walked in and saw who was sitting there. Caldwell, Mercer, Hobbs, Renata Poole in civilian clothes with a badge on her belt, and a captain with no badge at all sitting in the corner with a legal pad. Deschler's face did not change. That was the thing Emily never forgot. It did not change by 1 millimeter. Sir, she said, this looks like a serious meeting. Sit down, Marianne. Of course. She sat, she set the coffee down, she crossed her ankles. Are we discussing the Carter matter? Because I have been meaning to raise it with you. The article yesterday was very damaging, and I think we owe her a public statement of support whatever the inquiry finds. Emily felt something crawl across her scalp. Say that again, Caldwell said. Sir, I said we owe Captain Carter a statement of support. That story should never have run. I have already asked Public Affairs to look at where it came from. That is very generous of you. It is not generous, sir. She was clumsy, and she was wrong about the leak being internal, but she is a hard-working officer, and I do not think we should let a young woman be destroyed by gossip. Deschler folded her hands. Frankly, sir, I think the whole business has been mishandled from the top down, and I include myself in that. Mercer made a small sound. Something Grant, Deschler said pleasantly. No, ma'am. Marianne, Caldwell said, do you know a man named Daniel Walker? He is a GS9 in planning, sir. He makes the slides. Not a flicker. I understand he has not come to work in 2 days. I asked personnel to check on him yesterday afternoon, actually. His supervisor was worried. You asked personnel to check on him? Yes, sir. That was thoughtful. Sir, it is my job. And Caldwell said, do you know a company called Meridian Compliance Group? Deschler's coffee cup was halfway to her mouth. It stopped. It was not much, it was maybe a quarter of a second, but Emily was watching her hands and not her face, and the cup stopped, and then it kept going, and she took a sip and set it down. No, sir, she said. Should I pull Special Agent Poole? Renata Poole put a single piece of paper on the desk and turned it around. Ma'am, that is a consulting agreement dated the 18th of March, Poole said. It is between Meridian Compliance Group and Mr. Daniel Walker of Fayetteville, North Carolina. It is signed by a representative of Meridian on the second page. I am sure it is. Ma'am, would you like to see the second page? Not particularly, no. The name on it is Marian Dresser. That is not my name. No, ma'am, it is not. Poole put down a second sheet. That is a hotel registration from the 6th of April at a property in Raleigh in the name of Marian Dresser, paid with a card drawn on an account funded by a Nevada holding company. Ma'am, the loyalty number attached to that registration has been used 41 times since 2019, and 11 of those stays overlap with travel vouchers you submitted to this command under your own name to the same cities on the same dates. The room was very quiet. Deschler looked at the papers for a long moment, and then she laughed warmly and said, "Sir, this is embarrassing. May I speak plainly? Please." Marian Dresser is a name I have used for personal travel for 6 years. My ex-husband is a difficult man, and I have a protective order that I have never publicized because I did not want it in my file. Sir, you can pull the order. It is in Cumberland County. She looked around the room, calm and almost sad. You are going to feel very bad about this in about an hour. Emily felt the room tilt. Because it was good. It was so good. Mercer shifted in his chair. Hobbs looked at the floor. Even Poole hesitated for half a second, and Emily watched a lifetime of careful, patient, invisible work almost swing an entire room in 11 seconds. And then Emily Carter spoke for the first time. Ma'am, may I ask you one question? Deschler turned her head. Of course, Captain, she said. And she smiled, and she said it so kindly that Emily understood finally exactly how Sandra Voss had ended up in Alabama. Ma'am, when Daniel Walker met you, what did he call you? I have never met Daniel Walker. He says you told him not to worry about paperwork, Emily said. He says you told him that nobody ever gets in trouble for what is written down. People get in trouble for what they say out loud. That is a strange thing to invent. It is, ma'am. It is a very strange thing for a 26-year-old who makes slides to invent. Emily set the legal pad down. But that is not my question. My question is much simpler. Ma'am, on the 14th, Daniel gave a woman the name of a folder. Only the name. He never opened it, and he did not have the permissions to open it. Somebody else opened that folder at 16:31 on the 14th and viewed the corridor overlay for 4 minutes. Captain, I have no idea. Ma'am, I am not accusing you of opening it, Emily said. I am telling you that the account that opened it belongs to a lieutenant colonel named Ray Dunham, who has multiple sclerosis in his family and a job waiting for him at Apex Defense Solutions in the spring. Deschler's chin came up half an inch, and that right there was the crack. Then it sounds like you have your answer, she said. Yes, ma'am, that is what I thought too on Tuesday. Emily's voice did not rise at all. Except Lieutenant Colonel Dunham was in Bethesda on the 14th with his wife from 0900 until 1900, and the hospital has him on camera, and his badge never touched this installation that day. Nobody breathed. Ma'am, somebody used his credentials from a terminal in this building at 16:31 on the 14th. And 2 days ago, somebody used the General's authorization code from a shared terminal in your outer office at 1447. Emily looked at her. Ma'am, you have never once used your own name in your life. That is not a crime. It is a habit. But it is the only consistent thing in this entire case, and it is yours. Marian Deschler looked at Emily Carter for a long, long moment. And then she said, you should have taken the job. The room stopped. Marianne, Caldwell said very softly, Sir, I did not say anything. Captain Carter has never told this room that she was offered a job. Emily heard Hobbs exhale. She told you, Deschler said. Obviously she told you. She told me, Caldwell agreed, on the telephone at 17:12 the day before yesterday. She did not tell you. She has never spoken to you in her life. Deschler said nothing. Ma'am, Renata Poole said, standing up, I am going to ask you to come with me. And Colonel Marianne Deschler, Deputy Chief of Staff, 29 years of service, stood up smoothly, straightened her uniform jacket, and said the last thing she ever said inside that building. You are going to lose 11 Americans over a filing cabinet, she said, and you will tell yourselves you did the right thing. At 09:06, General Robert Caldwell stood at his window with his back to the room for about 40 seconds and did not speak, and nobody in that room rushed him. Then he turned around. Captain? Sir. 29 years, he said. I sat in a promotion board, and I signed off on that woman. I have eaten dinner at her house. I know her dog's name. Yes, sir. How did I not see it? Sir, you did not see it because she never gave you anything to see, Emily said. She never argued with you. She never asked for anything. Sir, in 11 months, I have never once heard her disagree with a single person in this command, and I did not notice that until Tuesday, and it is the strangest thing about her. Caldwell rubbed his face. Grant. Sir, get Dunham on a phone right now. He is not a traitor. He is a name somebody wore, and he is going to find out today that his credentials were used to help kill 26 soldiers, and I want him to hear it from you and not from an agent at his front door. Yes, sir. Dennis, I want a hold placed on every retirement package on this installation with a defense contractor on the follow-on employment form. Today, this morning, if somebody screams, send them to me. Yes, sir. And Captain, sir, your access is restored as of this moment, and if the staff judge advocate has an issue with that, he can come and find me and explain to my face why the officer who broke this case is the only person in the building who cannot read her own work. Emily's throat closed. Yes, sir. Do not thank me, Caldwell said. I have not done a single thing for you all week except get out of your way, and it took me 3 days to learn how. At 11:40, they went after Victor Kane, and it did not go the way Emily expected. It did not go badly. It went nowhere. That was worse. Poole laid it out flat on the table in Caldwell's office with a federal prosecutor on speaker. Sir Meridian is clean on paper. Delaware registration, Nevada holding company, 3 layers. Deschler ran it as an independent contractor. Every payment to Walker came from Meridian. Every payment to Meridian came from a consulting line item inside an Apex subsidiary that Kane does not sit on the board of. He is the chief executive, sir, of a company with 4,000 employees. There is no email, there is no text, there is no wire that has his fingerprints on it. Poole shook her head. Sir, this man has spent 22 years learning how not to be written down. So he walks. Sir, right now he walks. And Emily Carter said, Sir, may I say something that is going to sound like a very bad idea? Caldwell looked at her. Captain, at this point, I would like you to know that the phrase you keep using before you say the smartest thing in the room is not working on me anymore. Sir Victor Kane called my house. I know he did. Sir, he called my house at 16:52 on a Tuesday on his own telephone in his own voice, and he offered me $240,000 a year, 11 hours after my access was suspended. Emily leaned forward. There is no wire, there is no email, but there is a man who could not stand not being in the room, and he picked up a telephone himself, and he said the words out loud. Poole sat up very slowly. Ma'am, she said to nobody. Ma'am, the recruitment call. Agent Poole. Emily said, if I called him back, would that be legal? In North Carolina, ma'am, one-party consent. If you are on the call, you can record the call. Sir, Emily said. Caldwell stood there for a long moment. Captain, he said, if you do this and it goes wrong, they will say you entrapped a private citizen while you were under investigation. And that is the end of your career, and I will not be able to save it. Yes, sir, I know. Do you want to think about it? Sir, I have thought about nothing else since 16:52 on Tuesday. At 14:08, with a federal agent's recorder running and 4 people in a room holding absolutely still, Emily Carter dialed a number in Northern Virginia, and Victor Kane picked up on the 4th ring. Captain Carter. Warm. Delighted. Not one note out of place. I confess I had given up on you. Mr. Kane, you said the offer stood for a week. It does. Barely. A laugh. How are you holding up? I read something unpleasant yesterday. That is actually why I am calling. I thought it might be. Mr. Kane, I want to be honest with you because I do not have the energy to be anything else. Emily kept her voice tired. It was not hard. I am suspended. There is a commander's inquiry with my name on it, and I have realized in the last 48 hours that I am not going to win this. No, Kane said gently, you are not. So I have a question, and I would like a straight answer. Ask it. If I come to work for you, what happens to the inquiry? There was a pause. Emily watched Renata Poole's hand curl into a fist. Captain Kane said, let me explain something about how the world actually functions. An inquiry is a machine, and a machine needs fuel. The fuel is somebody caring about the outcome. The day you are no longer in the building, nobody in that building cares about the outcome, and the machine coasts to a stop and everybody goes to lunch. That is not an answer, sir. It is the only kind of answer there is. Mr. Kane, I need to hear you say that if I stop, it stops. And Victor Kane, who had spent 22 years being very careful, was talking to a 32-year-old woman he had already decided was beaten, and he was enjoying himself. Captain, he said, if you stop it, stops. I have made 3 phone calls on your behalf already this week, and I did not much enjoy making any of them. Come work for me, and the 4th call is a pleasant one. Nobody in that room moved. You made phone calls about me, Emily said. I made phone calls for you. To who? Mr. Kane, Captain. Sir, if I am going to burn my career down and get on a plane, I would like to know who I am shaking hands with when I land. Kane laughed, and it was fond, and it was the last comfortable sound he ever made about Emily Carter. You will meet her, he said. She has been looking forward to it for 4 days. At 14:11, in a room where 4 people had stopped breathing, Emily Carter asked the last question she would ever need to ask Victor Kane. Her Mr. Kane, her. Sir, I do not know who you mean. Captain, do not be coy. It is unattractive in somebody as bright as you. Kane sounded amused. He sounded like a man leaning back in a good chair. You have been at liberty for 11 months, and you never once asked yourself why the Deputy Chief of Staff kept getting your name in front of the right people. Marianne has been telling me about you since March. Renata Poole put her hand flat on the table. Emily kept her voice exactly where it was. Colonel Deschler, she said. Marianne, yes, she has an eye. She has always had an eye. She spotted you before anybody in that building did, and she spent 4 days trying to keep this from becoming what it became. And I will tell you privately, Captain, she is the only reason you still have a career to walk away from. Mr. Kane, I want to make sure I am hearing you correctly. You are. You are telling me that Colonel Marianne Deschler, the Deputy Chief of Staff of Fort Liberty, has been discussing me with the Chief Executive of a defense contractor. There was a pause of perhaps a second and a half, and then Victor Kane said the words that ended him. Captain, I am telling you that Marianne Deschler has been discussing everything at Fort Liberty with me for 6 years, and that neither of us has ever once put a syllable of it in writing, and that this conversation is the friendliest one you and I are ever going to have. Now, 240,000 equity and the machine stops. Yes or no? Emily looked at General Robert Caldwell across that table. Caldwell nodded once. Mr. Kane, Emily said, Colonel Deschler was taken into federal custody at 9:06 this morning. Nothing. Not a breath. Not a chair. Nothing at all for 4 full seconds. Mr. Kane, who is in the room with you? Special Agent Renata Poole of Army Criminal Investigation, an Assistant United States Attorney, on speaker Major Dennis Hobbs, Colonel Grant Mercer, and General Robert Caldwell. Captain Carter, Victor Kane said, and his voice had changed completely. It was not warm anymore. It was the voice of a major in 2004 being told he was a very good staff officer. You have made an enormous mistake. No, sir, Emily said. You made 3 phone calls on my behalf and you told me so out loud. And I did not put a word of it in writing either. He hung up. Renata Poole sat back in her chair and put both hands over her face and said one word into her palms that Emily pretended not to hear. Then she looked up. Ma'am, she said, in 19 years, I have never had a target name his co-conspirator, admit a 6-year relationship, and offer to terminate a federal proceeding in 90 seconds on tape. Agent Poole, is it enough? Ma'am, it is not enough, Poole said. So, it is a doorway, and I have 411 emails and a woman in a cell who just found out that the man she protected for 6 years handed her over to a captain because he could not stand losing an argument. Caldwell stood up. Then go talk to her, he said. Today, before somebody gets her a lawyer who is smarter than she is. At 15:02, the celebration in that room lasted exactly 11 minutes, and then Major Dennis Hobbs came through the door without knocking and said, Sir, they moved again. Emily was out of her chair before he finished. Say it, Major. Ma'am, the southern riverbed just emptied. 14 minutes ago, 6 vehicles pulled off the high ground and went east. East. Ma'am, they are going back to the northern pass. And Emily Carter felt the floor drop out from under her for the 4th time in 5 days. That is not possible, Mercer said. Deschler has been in custody since 9:06. She has not touched a telephone. She has not spoken to a soul. Sir, I know. Then who told them? Sir, I do not know. Caldwell said, Captain. Sir, give me 20 minutes. You have 10. She did it in 6. She did it standing at a whiteboard with a marker in her hand and Ortiz on a speakerphone, and she did it by asking the only question nobody in the room had asked all week. Miguel, what did those 2 men do in Daniel's kitchen? Ma'am, the morning they came, Daniel said they took his phone and one of them typed on it while the other one stood there smiling. Ma'am, they sent you the text, the one with no ma'am in it. That took 9 seconds, Miguel. Daniel said one of them typed for a while. There was a long silence on the line. Ma'am, Ortiz said slowly, ma'am, where is that phone right now? Say it, Miguel. Ma'am, it is in his apartment. CID sealed that apartment yesterday morning and nobody has been inside it since. And what is a telephone with software on it sitting in a sealed room? Ma'am, Ortiz said it is a microphone. Emily turned around and looked at 4 people who had all arrived at the same place at the same second. Sir, she said, we have been running this investigation for 2 days. Where have we been running it? Hobbs said, in this office. Yes, sir. And where else? On telephones. On telephones, Emily said. Sir Agent Poole briefed the storage unit recovery at 0712 this morning. Where was she standing? Renata Poole went absolutely white. I was in his apartment, she said. I was standing in that kitchen. Ma'am, I was standing 4 feet from that phone, and I said the word riverbed out loud. Nobody spoke. Get it out of there, Caldwell said. No, do not get it out of there, sir. Sir, and General Robert Caldwell smiled for the first time in 5 days, and it was not a nice smile at all. Agent Poole, he said, how would you feel about going back to that apartment this evening and having a very loud conversation about absolutely nothing? At 1640, they built the 3rd plan, and this time Emily Carter sat at the table, not in the 3rd row. At the table on Caldwell's left with a grease pencil in her hand, because when she had walked toward a chair against the wall, out of 11 years of habit, the general had said, Captain, what are you doing? And she had said, Sir, sitting down. And he had said, Not back there. You are not. Nobody in that room said a word about it. Here is what we know, Emily said. Their information has come through 2 channels, Deschler, who is in a cell, and a compromised device which is still live and which we now control. Sir, we have lost 1 hand and we have gained 1. Explain the gain, Mercer said. Sir, for 5 days the enemy has been telling us how fast our information travels. Every time they moved, they told us something. But now for the first time, we can decide exactly what they hear and exactly when they hear it. Caldwell said, You want to lie to them. Sir, I want to tell them the truth about a mission that is not happening while a different mission happens somewhere else. That is not a small thing, Captain. That is not a whiteboard exercise. If you are wrong, 26 of my soldiers walk into a pass with 9 trucks on the reverse slope. Yes, sir. So convince me. Emily put the marker down. Sir, I cannot convince you, she said. I can only show you the same thing I showed you on Monday, which is that these people have moved every single time somebody in an American building said a grid coordinate out loud. 9 times in 11 days. Every one of those movements is on my board. Sir, that is not a theory anymore. That is a habit. And a habit you can measure is a weapon you can use. Caldwell looked at Mercer, Grant, and Colonel Grant Mercer, who had run this captain over in front of 40 officers 5 days earlier, said, Sir, I have known you 19 years, and I am going to do the thing you asked me to do this morning at 3 o'clock. Do it. Sir, she is right, and I think we should do exactly what she says, and I want it on the record that I said so before we knew whether it worked. At 2038, Special Agent Renata Poole and 2 agents entered a sealed apartment in Fayetteville, and for 11 minutes they conducted a conversation of stunning ordinariness for the benefit of a telephone in a drawer. They complained about the paperwork, they complained about the heat, and at the 6-minute mark, one of them said, with beautiful irritation, that the whole thing was going to be moot anyway, because the Northern Pass had been locked back in that afternoon, and the birds were staged for Thursday. Then they left, and at 2049, they sealed the door again. Emily and Ortiz watched a ridgeline for the next 19 hours. At 1611 the following day, 9 vehicles came off the high ground east of the southern riverbed and moved back into the northern pass and set into exactly the same positions they had held 11 days earlier, and one of them parked on top of a covered mortar base plate that a 32-year-old captain had found by looking at a shadow at 1640 local time on a Sunday she should have spent asleep. Ortiz put down his coffee. Ma'am, I see it, Miguel. Ma'am, they are all in one place. Yes. Ma'am, they are all in one place and they are looking the wrong way and they think we are coming Thursday. Emily picked up the phone. Sir, she said, it worked. At 0140 on the following Wednesday, 31 hours before an operation, the enemy was absolutely certain of 2 aircraft came in from the southeast on an axis nobody had ever briefed, and Operation Silent Horizon began. Emily Carter watched it from a chair in the operations room at Fort Liberty, with her hands folded in her lap so that nobody could see them, and she did not say a single word for the first 11 minutes. There was nothing to say. That was the thing about it. Everything she had done was already done. Every hour of imagery, every argument, every humiliation, every drive home in the dark, all of it had been spent. And now 26 people she had never met were walking through a place she had chosen for them, and she could not help them at all. At 0149, the ground element reported movement on their left. Emily's heart stopped. Say again, Caldwell said. 2 individuals, unarmed, moving away. Shepherds, Mercer said. Sir, that is Shepherds. Confirm they are moving away. Confirmed, sir. Away. At 0203, the assault element reached the objective. At 0206, somebody on a radio 11,000 kilometers away said a word that made 12 people in that room put their hands over their mouths at the same time. The word was jackpot. At 0209, the count came. 11, all 11, 2 Litter 9 ambulatory. And General Robert Caldwell, 4 stars, 35 years, a man who had never once raised his voice in that building, put both fists on the table and said, yes, so loudly that a specialist by the door jumped. At 0221, the last man was on the aircraft. At 0238, they crossed out. And at 0244, when the birds were feet wet and the room finally let itself breathe, Emily Carter walked out into the hallway and stood against the wall with her hand over her eyes, and Sergeant First Class Miguel Ortiz came out and stood next to her and did not say anything at all for about a minute. Then he said, Ma'am, is it all right if I say something stupid? Please. Ma'am, there are 11 guys on an airplane right now who will never know your name. Good, Emily said. Ma'am, that is not fair. Miguel, she said, that is the entire job. Colonel Marianne Deschler broke on a Thursday at 11:20, and she did not break because of the emails or the hotel registrations or the alias. She broke because Renata Poole played her the phone call. She sat there in a plain room with her lawyer beside her, and she listened to Victor Kane's voice say her first name out loud to a 32-year-old captain. And she listened to him say 6 years. And she listened to him say, she is the only reason you still have a career to walk away from. And something in her face came apart in a way that 19 years of interrogation experience had not prepared Renata Poole to watch. Play it again, Deschler said. Poole played it again. Deschler listened to the whole thing a second time. Then she looked at her lawyer, and then she looked at the table, and she said, he used my name. Yes, ma'am. In one conversation. To a captain. She laughed. It was a terrible sound. Do you know how careful I have been? Do you have any idea what it costs to be that careful for 6 years? Ma'am, I would like to know. Everything, Marianne Deschler said. It cost everything. She talked for 11 hours over 3 days. She gave them the structure. She gave them Meridian and the Nevada Holding Company and the consulting line inside of the Apex subsidiary, and she gave them the 2 men who had sat in Daniel Walker's kitchen, and she gave them the names of 4 journalists who had been fed material over 6 years, including one who had received a hostage count from a burner phone at 15:21 on a Tuesday. And she gave them Sandra Voss. He asked me to handle it, she said. Ma'am, define handle. He never defines anything. That is the whole point of him. Deschler's hands were flat on the table. He said, Marianne, that woman is going to make my next 4 years difficult. And I said I understood. And he said, I did not ask you to do anything. And I said, no, you did not. And then what did you do? I made 3 phone calls, Deschler said. And by the time I was done, Sandra Voss was a woman with a drinking problem, in a bad marriage, in a bad attitude, and none of it was true, and none of it needed to be true, and I did it in 11 days. Poole let the silence sit. Ma'am, why are you telling me this? And Marianne Deschler looked up at her. Because I did it to that girl too, she said. Carter, I pulled her file at 1447 and I read about her father and I knew inside of 4 minutes exactly which page would do it, and I did not hesitate. Not for 1 second. And I want somebody to write down that I did not hesitate. Emily read that transcript at 6:16 on a Saturday in her own kitchen, and she read the last 4 lines 11 times, and then she got up and washed a dish that was already clean. She called Caldwell at 0640. Sir, I have read it. I know. Poole told me she sent it. Sir, I do not know what I am supposed to feel. Nothing good, Caldwell said. Captain, that woman decided in 4 minutes to use your dead father as a weapon. There is no shape you can bend yourself into where that becomes something you feel fine about, and I would not trust you if there were. Sir, she said she did not hesitate. Yes. Sir, why would she say that? Because she wanted somebody to know what she had become, Caldwell said. People confess for 100 reasons, Captain. Guilt is only one of them, and it is not the most common. Sometimes a person just needs one other human being to look directly at what they turned into so they do not have to be the only one who saw it. Emily sat with that. Sir, I do not forgive her. Nobody asked you to? Sir, will I have to? No, Caldwell said. You will have to testify, which is much harder and much more useful. Victor Kane was indicted 11 weeks later. It took 11 weeks because federal prosecutors do not move at the speed of anger, and because the assistant United States attorney on that speakerphone spent every one of those weeks building a case that could survive $480 an hour of defense counsel. Emily learned things during those 11 weeks that she had not wanted to learn. She learned that a man with $1.4 billion in revenue can hire a public relations firm the way other people hire a plumber, and that within 9 days of the indictment, there were 3 separate articles suggesting that the entire matter was a personnel dispute at a military base that had spiraled out of control. She learned that 2 of those articles quoted an unnamed defense official. She learned that one of them used the phrase stress-related evaluation again, and that her cousin in Ohio called again, and that she cried in her car for the 2nd time in 3 months and then stopped and drove to work. And she learned on a Tuesday in October that Victor Kane's attorneys had filed a motion to suppress the recorded telephone call on the grounds that a suspended intelligence officer under active investigation had acted as an agent of the government while lacking any lawful authority to do so. The hearing on that motion was 11 days later. Emily sat in a federal courtroom in a dress uniform and listened to a very expensive lawyer describe her for 40 minutes as an unstable junior officer with a documented history of psychological referral who had been weaponized by a general officer trying to cover up his own catastrophic planning failure. She did not blink. She had gotten extremely good at not blinking. At 14:41, the judge denied the motion in 90 seconds, and Emily watched Victor Kane's face when it happened, and she understood something that she would think about for years afterward. He was not afraid. He was offended, that was all. A man had spent 22 years arranging the world so that consequences happened to other people. And now something had gone wrong with the arrangement, and the expression on his face was the expression of a man whose flight has been canceled. He looked over at her once on his way out. He did not glare. He did not sneer. He gave her a small, courteous nod, the way you nod at somebody you played tennis against, and Emily thought you still do not think this is real. You think this is a bad quarter. The subcommittee hearing on overseas personnel recovery capability happened on a Thursday morning in a room with too much marble in it. It had been scheduled for 6 weeks after the ambush that never happened. It happened 4 months late because the entire subject had changed. Emily testified for 2 hours and 11 minutes. She had been told to expect hostility, and there was some. There was a member from a state with an Apex facility in it who spent 9 minutes asking her about her security clearance status and the commander's inquiry. And Emily answered every question in a flat, boring, exact voice, the way an old man in a fishing shirt had once told her to. Captain Carter, is it correct that your access was suspended? Yes, sir, on the 22nd at 0834. And restored? Yes, sir, 4 days later at 0911. And the commander's inquiry? Closed, sir, no adverse finding. I have the memorandum if the subcommittee would like it. Captain, would you agree that you went outside your lane? And Emily said, sir, I would agree that I went outside my rank. The room made a sound. Explain the distinction, Captain. Sir, my lane was intelligence analysis of enemy activity in that province, and I stayed inside it for 640 hours. My rank was captain, and a captain is not expected to stand up in front of a four-star general and say the word wrong. That is the line I crossed, sir. And with respect, sir, that line is not written down anywhere. It is just something everybody knows. And you would do it again. Sir, I would do it faster, Emily said. I sat on that imagery for 2 days trying to find a polite way to say it, and there is no polite way to say it. And those 2 days almost cost 26 lives. At 11:40, a member from Michigan leaned into her microphone and asked the only question that broke Emily's composure the entire morning. Captain, I want to ask you something that is not about the corridor. Colonel Deschler released your sealed medical history. That history involves the death of your father. Would you be willing to tell this subcommittee what that felt like? Emily was quiet for a moment. Ma'am, she said, my father was a machinist for 31 years, and he never understood a single thing about my job. Captain, ma'am, I am answering. He never understood it. But when I graduated, he drove 9 hours in a truck with a bad transmission, and he stood in the back, and he did not say anything to anybody. And afterward, he shook my hand. Her voice was steady. It stayed steady the whole time. He died in February of 2017. In March, I was working 19-hour days because when I stopped working, I had to be a person whose father was dead. My commander noticed and sent me to talk to somebody, and I went and it helped, and I came back to work. Ma'am, that is the entire thing. It is 1 page long. And 9 years later, a colonel read that page and decided in 4 minutes that the fastest way to make people stop listening to me was to tell them that the worst month of my life was who I am. The room was very quiet. So what did it feel like, ma'am? It felt like she took the last private thing I had and made it a personnel weapon. And I want to say one more thing, if I may. Please, Captain. Ma'am, there are thousands of soldiers in this army who have gone and talked to somebody. We tell them to. We put posters up about it. And every single one of them watched what happened to me this year. Emily looked directly at the woman. Ma'am, if this subcommittee does one thing today, I would ask that it not be about me. I would ask that it be about the fact that a page in a sealed file walked out of a vault in 11 hours and that nobody has fixed that, and that the next person it happens to might be a 19-year-old private who then never talks to anybody about anything for the rest of his life. Nobody asked her another question about her father. Daniel Walker pleaded guilty on a Monday in January to 1 count of unauthorized disclosure of government information. He faced a maximum that his attorney described to him honestly as unlikely, but real. And he sat in a room and shook and asked 11 times whether his mother would find out, and she did find out because he told her himself on a Sunday afternoon in her kitchen. He was sentenced to 3 years probation, 400 hours of community service, and a permanent bar from federal employment. He testified against Marianne Deschler for 2 days and against Victor Kane for 3, and on the second day of the Kane trial, a defense attorney spent 4 hours trying to make a 26-year-old former GS9 look like a liar, and failed because Daniel Walker had saved everything, and because when the attorney finally said, Mr. Walker, you took money, did you not? Daniel said, yes, sir, $1,200 a month for 4 months. $4,800. I have paid every cent of it back, and I still cannot sleep, and I do not expect you to believe that, but you asked. Emily wrote him a letter after the verdict. She wrote it by hand, which she had not done in years, and she wrote 4 drafts and threw away 3 of them, and the one she sent was 6 sentences long. She wrote that he had done a wrong thing for an ordinary reason. She wrote that a great many people would have done the same and told themselves a story about it forever. She wrote that he had been the only person in the entire chain who, when he was finally frightened enough, chose the harder thing. And she wrote that 11 Americans and 26 soldiers came home in part because a 26-year-old who made slides had been too anxious to throw away his email. He wrote back 4 lines. He wrote that he was working at a hardware store in Sanford. He wrote that his mother was doing all right. He wrote that he still checked the side mirror sometimes and probably always would. And he wrote, ma'am, thank you for not lying to me in that car. Major Sandra Voss came back in the spring. Emily met her exactly once at a coffee shop outside Fort Rucker on a Saturday because Emily had asked, and Voss had said yes and then almost canceled twice. She was 44 years old and she had spent 14 months answering telephones, and she was not warm and she was not grateful, and Emily had not expected her to be either of those things. You want me to say thank you, Voss said. No, ma'am. Everybody wants me to say thank you. There have been 11 emails. A colonel I do not know sent me flowers. Ma'am, I did not come for thank you. Then why did you come? And Emily said, because I wanted to tell you to your face that it was not true and that people know it was not true now, and that if I had known your name in March, I would have called out you, and I did not know your name until a colonel said it in a room, and I am sorry that nobody said it sooner. Sandra Voss looked at her coffee for a long time. Captain, she said, do you know what the worst part was? No, ma'am. It was not the rumor, it was that my own sister asked me if it was true. Her jaw moved. My sister. And I understood why she asked, and that is the part I cannot put down. Yes, ma'am. They gave me back my career last month like it was a coat I left somewhere. Voss shook her head. 14 months. My marriage did not survive it. Nobody is giving that back. No, ma'am. Are you going to tell me it was worth it? No, ma'am, Emily said. I do not think it was worth it. I think it was a crime somebody committed against you, and the fact that it eventually came out does not make it a story with a moral in it. And Sandra Voss looked up at her, and something behind her face let go just slightly. Okay, she said. Okay, that I can drink coffee with. Victor Kane was convicted on a Friday in June. 11 counts, conspiracy, unlawful procurement of government information obstruction, and 2 counts related to the disclosure of national defense information that his own attorneys had told him privately were the ones that would put him in a cell. Apex Defense Solutions was suspended from federal contracting the following Tuesday. The board removed him the same week and issued a statement about a small number of individuals acting outside company policy, and Emily read it in her kitchen and laughed out loud alone for the first time in a year. He was sentenced in October to 8 years. He gave a statement before sentencing. It was 4 minutes long and it was excellent, and in the entire 4 minutes he did not use the word wrong once. He spoke about a competitive environment. He spoke about a system that punishes decisiveness. He spoke about having devoted his life to the men and women who serve. The judge listened to all of it. Then the judge said, Mr. Kane, 26 American soldiers were scheduled to enter that corridor on the 21st. Your counsel has correctly noted that they did not and that no one died. I want to be precise about why no one died. No one died because a 32-year-old captain looked at a photograph of a hillside on a Sunday night when she was not required to, and because, when a room full of her superiors laughed at her, she did not sit down. He paused. That is the only reason, Mr. Kane. There is no other reason. Your plan worked. Every part of it worked. It was defeated by one person's stubbornness, and I am not going to sentence you as though the outcome you intended is somehow to your credit. Emily was in the courtroom for that. She did not cry. She had promised herself she would not, and she did not. And afterwards, she stood in a hallway with Renata Poole and could not remember a single thing about the walk out of the room. Ma'am, Poole said, you all right? Agent Poole, I do not know. That is the correct answer, Poole said. It takes most people about a year. How long did it take you, ma'am? I will let you know. The apology came in November. Emily had almost forgotten about it. Not entirely, but almost the way you almost forget a debt somebody else owes you. It had been 11 months and she had a new office and a restored clearance and a Legion of Merit that she had accepted with an expression her friends described afterward as constipated, and she had genuinely stopped waiting. Then General Robert Caldwell scheduled a command staff briefing in the same operations room and put her on the agenda and did not tell her why. There were 51 people in that room. Some of them had been in it 11 months earlier. Major Hobbs was there, now a lieutenant colonel. Grant Mercer was there. Beth Kowalczyk was there in the back because Caldwell's aide had called her section personally and asked her to attend, and nobody had explained that either. And Miguel Ortiz was there standing along the wall with the other senior enlisted in a uniform he had pressed twice. Caldwell walked to the front and did not use notes because he never had. Before we start, he said, I have a personal matter to address, and I am going to do it in front of everybody because that is where I did the original. The room went quiet in a way Emily recognized. On the 20th of last year in this room at approximately 0720, Captain Emily Carter stood up and told me that my extraction corridor was compromised. She had the imagery. She had the dates. She had done 640 hours of work, and she was correct in every particular. He stopped. I told her, and I am quoting myself, you analyze screens, Captain. I command soldiers. And then I laughed at her, and then most of you laughed with me, which I want you to sit with for a moment because I have been sitting with it for 11 months. Nobody in that room moved. I want to be exact about what I did, Caldwell said. Because if I am vague, this becomes a story about a general being humble, and that is not what this is. What I did was look at a 32-year-old woman with the correct answer and decide in under 3 seconds that she could not possibly have it. I did not evaluate her evidence. I evaluated her rank, her age, and the fact that she works in a building instead of a wadi. I have been doing this for 36 years, and I made that decision the way you decide to scratch your arm. He looked out at them. If she had sat down, 26 of our soldiers would have gone into that pass on the 21st. They would have gone in because I sent them. And I would have stood in front of 26 families and told them that we had done everything we could, and I would have believed it. And it would have been a lie that I did not know was a lie, which is the only kind that actually destroys a man. Emily's eyes were burning, and she was furious about it. Captain Carter, Caldwell said. Stand up, please. She stood up. I owe you an apology in front of people because that is where I took it from you. Captain, I was wrong. I was wrong in my judgment. I was wrong in my manner. And I was wrong in front of 40 officers who took their cue from me and treated you the way I treated you for the next 4 days. I am sorry, and I will be sorry about it after I retire. He put out his hand. Emily Carter walked 23 steps to the front of that room. She counted them again. She had counted them the first time with her legs aching, and she counted them this time and her legs were fine. She shook his hand, and then General Robert Caldwell turned back to the room and said, now, the reason this is not just a nice moment. He picked up a piece of paper. Effective the 1st of the month, this installation implements the Carter Protocol. It is 4 pages long. Colonel Hobbs wrote it, and I have already signed it, so nobody is voting on anything. Somebody actually laughed. It broke the room a little, which Emily suspected he had intended. 1. Any planning cell in this command will designate a dissent chair. That officer's job is to attempt to break the plan, and that officer is protected from the consequences of doing so in writing by name by me. 2. No authorization code held by a general officer at this installation will execute the release of sealed personnel records. Not mine, not my successors. If somebody needs a sealed file, they will ask a general with a signature in person, and there will be a record of it, and that record will be provided to the soldier whose file it is within 24 hours. Emily's chest went tight. 3. Any officer or employee of this command who departs for employment with a defense contractor holding or pursuing a contract, touching their duties will be screened, and I do not care how uncomfortable that makes anybody at any level. And 4, he put the paper down, every officer who briefs in this room will be reminded of the following before they begin. The most junior person present may be the only one holding the answer, and the odds that you will recognize this in the moment are very poor because I did not. He let that sit. Questions? Nobody had any. One more thing, Caldwell said. Sergeant First Class Ortiz. Ortiz came off the wall so fast he nearly hit his head. Sir? Come up here, Sergeant. Ortiz walked to the front of that room like a man walking to a firing squad. For 4 days last year, Caldwell said, after this officer's access was suspended and her name was in a newspaper article, this non-commissioned officer continued to work a target set on his own time, drove to a missing civilian's apartment at 0630 on his own initiative, and refused to say one negative word about his captain to any of the 11 people who asked him to. Ortiz stared straight ahead. Sergeant, I have been told you kept a green notebook. Yes, sir. Where is it? Sir, it is in my pocket. Of course it is, Caldwell said. Hold on to that. In about 9 years, when you are a sergeant major and some captain nobody believes comes into your office, you are going to want it. At 16:11 that afternoon, Emily Carter sat in her office and did not get any work done at all. And at 16:40, there was a knock, and it was Grant Mercer. Ma'am, he said, which was new. Sir, please do not call me ma'am. It makes me feel 11 years older. Major, you are going to have to get used to it. Emily blinked at him. Sir, board results are out Monday. I have seen them. Mercer almost smiled. Do not make a face at me. You were below the zone and you got picked up, and you can be as uncomfortable about it as you like. Sir, I do not. Carter, he put his hand on the doorframe. I came to say something and I am bad at this, so let me say it and go. Yes, sir. Last year into this building, I told you that I regretted the method, but not the priority. Do you remember, sir? I remember every word of that week. It was a coward's sentence, Mercer said. I dressed it up like integrity. What I actually meant was that I did not want to admit that I ran you over because it was easy and because nobody would ever make me pay for it. He looked at her. Major, I was wrong and I am sorry, and I have said the same thing to Sandra Voss on a telephone that took me 4 months to pick up. Emily did not know what to do with her face. Sir, do not be gracious about it. I have not earned gracious. Sir, I was not going to be gracious. I was going to say that you sat in a truck in a diner parking lot at 7:03 in the morning for a captain you did not like, and that you told a 4-star general I was right before anybody knew whether I was. Mercer stood there for a second. Well, he said, that is a nicer version. Sir, it is also the true one. You are just better at remembering the parts where you failed. Grant Mercer laughed one hard sound and knocked twice on the door frame and left. The 11 Americans came home on a Wednesday, and Emily Carter was not there. That was on purpose. She had been invited, and she had said no, and Caldwell had asked her once why and had never asked again. She told Ortiz the real reason a year later in a parking lot because he asked her directly, and she had never once lied to him. Miguel, if I go then, somebody takes a photograph and then it becomes a story about me. Ma'am, it is a story about you. No, it is not, Emily said. It is a story about a mortar base plate that somebody covered badly and about a date stamp that did not match. Those two things did not care who found them. If I had gotten hit by a truck on the 16th, that base plate would still have been there and eventually somebody else would have looked at the shadow. Ma'am, nobody else looked at the shadow. That is the part that scares me. Ma'am, and Emily said, Miguel, I did not save anybody by being brave. I saved them by being right and then by refusing to sit down. And the second one is the one nobody teaches, and it is the only one that mattered. She stayed in the Army. There were offers, not from Apex obviously, which stopped existing under that name 18 months later, but from 4 other firms, and one of them was for $310,000. And Emily read the letter twice and put it in a drawer. She was promoted to major and then 5 years later to lieutenant colonel, and she spent the middle part of her career doing the least glamorous work in the United States Army, which was teaching intelligence officers how to say the word wrong to somebody with more rank than they had. She began every single one of those classes the same way. She would stand in front of 30 or 40 young captains and lieutenants, and she would say, somebody in this room is going to be the only person who knows something true. Statistically, it will happen to about 11 of you, and when it does, the entire building will be organized against you, and none of it will be a conspiracy. It will just be that you are junior and tired, and the plan is already printed. And then she would say the thing they remembered. You are going to want to wait for a better moment. There is no better moment. Nobody is ever going to invite you to be inconvenient. You are going to have to stand up while your hands are shaking and say it badly to a room that is going to laugh at you, and then you are going to have to stay standing after they do. One of them always asked how she knew, and Lieutenant Colonel Emily Carter would say, because a general laughed at my rank once, and then he opened my file, and the room stopped laughing, and 11 Americans came home. He was a better man than the laugh, and I did not know that yet. So do not decide who somebody is by the worst 3 seconds you have seen from them. Just make them look at the evidence. General Robert Caldwell retired 11 months after that briefing. At his ceremony, he was permitted 3 minutes of remarks and used 2 of them. He thanked his wife. He thanked 4 soldiers by name from 4 different decades, one of them, a sergeant first class with a green notebook. And then he said, I commanded for 36 years, and the single most important decision of my career took me 4 seconds. A captain asked me for 90 seconds, and I said yes. And I have never been able to explain to anybody, including myself, why I said yes that day when I had said no 1,000 times before. I have decided to stop trying to explain it. I have decided instead to tell every officer I meet for the rest of my life that if you have a habit of saying no, then one day the person you say no to will be right, and you will not get a warning, and there will be no music playing, and it will look exactly like every other morning. He stepped back from the microphone. Then he stepped forward again. Her name was Emily Carter, he said. She was a captain. She was 32 years old. She was the most junior person in the room, and she was the only one who was right, and I laughed at her. Do not be me. Be 4 seconds faster than I was. Captain Emily Carter walked into a room where nobody believed her, and 40 officers laughed, and a 4-star general told her that she analyzed screens while he commanded soldiers. She did not shout. She did not quit. She did not sit down. She put a folder on the table and made them look at it. 11 Americans slept in their own beds because of what was in that folder. 26 soldiers never walked into that pass. A colonel who traded lives for a contract went to a cell, and the man who paid her went to a cell after that, and a major in Alabama got her name back. Rank was never the strongest thing in that room. The truth was, and she was the one holding it,